Chapter 322. Yanfengli's ability was not bad. He was worthy of being a supervisor twice. Wu Ming used Jack the Ripper's skill, Intelligence Erase, to erase all the information about Wu Ming in Yanfengli's mind. Intelligence Erase B. At the end of the battle, including encounter, the memory of witnesses and opponents, recorded information about Jack's ability, real name, and appearance will disappear. But it can't fool scientific products such as cameras. Wu Ming didn't find anything like a camera inside the Holy Church, so Wu Ming didn't choose to use mist to cover his appearance. Instead, he chose to use Intelligence Erase. Wu Ming left the Holy Church and came to the street. Lancer, Rider, Caster, Berserker, and me, Assassin. Does this mean that the other party didn't notice me in Gilgamesh's archer? Wu Ming stood in the shadow and analyzed what Yanfengli said. In addition to the 6 of us, there is still Saber with the best attributes. I don't know if she hasn't come yet or if she's hiding. Wu Ming thought for a moment and didn't think about it anymore. Well, in that case, let's leave it at that. For the time being, I can't figure out the reason for this world's abnormality. After a while, Wu Ming returned to the small villa. The house was dark, and the light was not turned on. Bam! Wu Ming turned on the light, and then Queen's voice came. Too slow. Golden particles began to gather on the sofa, and Gilgamesh's figure appeared. You haven't slept yet, Gil. Wu Ming sat next to Gilgamesh and said with a little surprise. What's there to be surprised about? As a servant, this king doesn't need to sleep. But you, this king has been waiting for you to come back. Can't you even say a word of thanks? Gilgamesh said proudly. Indeed, Gilgamesh was right. A servant only needed to enter spiritual form to replace sleep, and as long as there was enough mana or food, the servant could always be active. So my queen, have you put the tableware on the table in the sink? Wu Ming cast a smile at Gilgamesh. This king has already taken care of such a trivial matter. Gilgamesh crossed his arms in front of his chest and said rather disdainfully. Then go to sleep. No matter what, girls should go to bed early. Wu Ming patted Gilgamesh's head as if he was treating a child. And Wu Ming was ready to accept Gilgamesh's anger, but Gilgamesh didn't get angry. Wu Ming removed his hand from Gilgamesh's head and looked at Gilgamesh, who didn't do anything. Gilgamesh looked at Wu Ming and turned into golden particles and disappeared. This is a reward for you. Don't be too proud, Henryang. Gilgamesh's voice came from the air and then disappeared. Really, there should be a limit to arrogance. Wu Ming shook his head helplessly and then walked into the kitchen. When Wu Ming wanted to wash the dishes, he found that there was no tableware in the sink, but it was clean. Next to the sink, a few plates and bowls were neatly stacked together. It looked like someone had already washed them. Although the kitchen sink was in a mess, it was obvious that it was done by someone who didn't wash dishes for a long time. Really? Wu Ming laughed. He didn't expect Queen Flash to take his joke seriously. Wu Ming really didn't expect Gil to wash the dishes. However, Wu Ming bet that the male version of Adult Flash wouldn't do that. Only his Queen Flash would be arrogant. Since I have nothing to do, I might as well go investigate the enemy. After that, Wu Ming left the small mansion. Gilgamesh revealed himself and looked at the direction Wu Ming left. He muttered, and then entered the spirit state. Boring. The next morning, Wu Ming returned to the small mansion. Gilgamesh came into contact with the spirit state and revealed himself. Did you go to investigate for information, Henryang? Gilgamesh returned to her good queen posture and said domineeringly. Yes, information is very important. Wu Ming nodded and went to the sofa to sit down. You already have this king. What are you still investigating for? If this king wanted, he could have ended the Holy Grail War last night. Gilgamesh also came to his exclusive seat and sat down. It was a rather tasteful and luxurious seat. It was also left behind by the owner of this house. Because he left in a hurry, Wu Ming directly spent money to buy some of the more valuable things. At first, the owner of this house didn't want to buy it. After all, it was also an antique. However, because he was in a hurry and left in a hurry, this seat was successfully traded by Wu Ming at a price that satisfied both parties. Then it was occupied by Gilgamesh. Although Wu Ming bought it for Gil, sitting on her luxurious seat, Queen Twinkle crossed her legs and supported her chin with one hand, silently looking at Wuming. After all, there is an old saying that goes, "Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated." Wuming poured a glass of wine for Gilgamesh and handed it to Her Majesty Queen, who was crossing her legs. "So what information did you find out, Hyenryong?" Gilgamesh took the transparent goblet and took a sip. Then she looked at Wuming as if her anger had subsided. "You also know that the Holy Grail War was started by the so-called three families." While talking, Wuming also poured himself a glass of wine. The three families are composed of the Inosaka family, the Mesotome family, and the House of Einstein barons. Last night, I explored the local residences of these three families and found two servants. One is a male servant suspected of being a king in the Inosaka family, and the other is a female servant with snake breath in the Mesotome family. After taking a sip of wine, Wuming continued. "There is no one in the castle of the House of Einstein barons in Winterwood City. They should have not yet arrived in Winterwood City. Plus, there is a supervisor of the Holy Church. It is inferred that the servant of the House of Einstein barons should be a saber swordsman. The servants of the Mesotome family and the Inosaka family are not caster or berserker. As for why, I will tell you later. In short, these two should be lancer and rider." Wuming put down the glass and then took out a map from nowhere. "And here I found traces of berserker." Wuming pointed to the place on the edge of Winterwood City, and that place was the Amiya Mansion. Wuming went to the Amiya Mansion with the idea of seeing Shiro Amiya in this world. As a result, he accidentally found multiple magic barriers and traces of berserker. There is no way, a big guy who seems to have no sense of reason can't hide. There is no need to guess. And this is the berserker that Wuming knows, Hercules. When Wuming found berserker, he was waiting in the courtyard of the Amiya Mansion. Although Wuming did not find the master, Wuming could almost guess. Magician killer, Amiya Kiritsugu. Wuming narrowed his eyes. "And then did you fight with berserker?" Gilgamesh shook the glass and asked with interest. "Of course not, I just accidentally found the trace of berserker, and then quickly retreated, but the other side should have found me." Wuming remembered the guy who wanted to become a partner of justice, and could not help but frown. A partner of justice is as cunning as a fox. Chapter 323. Although Wuming knew Amiya Kiritsugu from another world, she was a righteous partner, who would sacrifice a small number of people to save the majority of people. Wuming sneered. "Your smile is really pleasant, Hyenryong, but this king likes it." Gilgamesh praised Wuming. Wuming reacted and rubbed his cheeks. "Is it a negative effect caused by spiritual pollution?" Then Wuming continued. "I only met these servants once, and then they quickly left me, and I also met Caster here. That's why I judged that the two servants of the Inosaka family and Mitsuhiro family were not Caster and berserker." Wuming pointed to the Winterwood Hotel in Winterwood City. "Listening to you, did you fight with Caster?" Gilgamesh said. As a king, Gilgamesh could naturally understand the meaning of Wuming's words. "Well, and the other party is my acquaintance, it's really ironic." Wuming smiled sarcastically. "Then, why don't you tell me about your ironic experience to help this king pass the time?" Gilgamesh casually drank a mouthful of wine and leaned back in his seat. Then Wuming began to recall. After leaving the Amiya Mansion, Wuming found a street lamp and stopped. "I should have thought about it. How can there be no Amiya Kiritsugu in Winterwood City?" Wuming, wearing a black leather coat and a top hat, stood on the street lamp with his legs straight, looking into the distance. Lancer, lancer, archer, archer, rider, cavalry, assassin, assassin, and berserker, berserker, have all been confirmed. Saber, swordsman, is probably not here yet, so only caster, magician, is left. Then Wuming looked at the Winterwood Hotel, which was the largest hotel in Winterwood City. Basically, some foreigners would stay here. Let's try our luck. Wuming's figure disappeared. In the Winterwood Hotel, a man with short blonde hair in his 20s was talking with a woman beside him. It seemed that the two were lovers. Suddenly, blue particles appeared around the two of them. And the blue particles turned into a young man with short blue hair, wearing a classical costume and holding a staff. "What's going on, Caster?" the man asked. "Master, there is a servant coming, and the sensing technique I set up in the distance is working. The blue-haired man said lazily. So, are you sure you can kill the other party? The man with short blonde hair said to kill. It seemed that he was a very arrogant person. The other party is just an assassin, no problem, but I'm afraid that the other party will sneak in. The blue-haired man meant that if the assassin who specialized in dealing with the master sneaked in when he was not there, then it would be troublesome. Don't worry, I still have the moon marrow elixir. The man with short blonde hair took out a few test tubes with some silver-white liquid in them. That's all right, I'm leaving, master. After that, the blue-haired man disappeared. Is it okay, Kenneth? A woman asked with some concern. Although she did not like her fiancé very much, she did not hate him. It was okay to be worried. Don't worry, Sora. Let's not talk about my moon marrow elixir. He is a famous servant. The man named Kenneth said proudly as if he was praising himself. Well, that's good. The woman named Sora nodded. Then, let me see the glory of Ku Churin. Kenneth looked at the place where the blue-haired man disappeared and said carefully. On the other side, Wuming, who had arrived at Tuki Hotel, suddenly felt that something was wrong. Is there an idle person dispersing technique around? It seems that I've been discovered. Although he was discovered, Wuming did not panic. As a qualified assassin, Jack the Ripper was undoubtedly qualified. Not only was his aura concealment level A+, but he also had support skills and noble phantoms, such as intelligence concealment, Fog Knight's murder, dark fog, and so on. For an assassin, it was simply a success. This was also why Jack the Ripper, even if he was an assassin, could cause great headaches to both the red and black sides. It seems that this caster is quite a powerful character to be able to detect me without me noticing. Wuming stood in front of the Winterwood Hotel, and did not hide. He just waited for the arrival of the other party. Then you guessed wrong. It's just a little trick, Senior. Suddenly, a familiar and frivolous voice was heard. This voice. Is it Cuculin? Wuming felt a little helpless. Could it be that this was a battle between different classes to mock the battle between Serence and Cuculin? Sure enough, Senior, it's really you. With the appearance of the blue particles, Cuculin's figure appeared in front of Wuming. It's really God's will, Cuculin. Wuming looked at Cuculin indifferently. Although in Wuming's memory, Cuculin was a freak in blue tights, but in front of him, Cuculin was a mage in a robe and holding a wooden scepter. You've changed a lot. Wuming joked. I have the adaptability of a caster magician, but I didn't expect you to become an assassin. Did something happen to you after you left Connaught? Cuculin asked in a comfortable tone, as if he was chatting with a good friend whom he hadn't seen for many years. I did experience a lot. Speaking of which, were you killed by Maeve's plot? Wuming was concerned about Cuculin's death. In Wuming's history, Cuculin was summoned by Maeve. Cuculin was also a disciple of Skaha, and fought with his fellow apprentice, Ferdia. In the end, Cuculin won a Pyrrhic victory. Then he was plotted against by a bard invited by Maeve and was killed by his own gun. Ah yes, I was plotted against by Maeve. In the end, I was killed by my own gun. How ironic. Although Cuculin said so, he did not show much anger. Instead, he calmly accepted his own death. Senior, you shouldn't be dead. I heard some rumors about you from my teacher. What Cuculin meant was that Wuming, as the powerful body of the Dragon of Origin, should not die. I'm not dead, but this time, I participated in the Holy Grail War because I have some things to investigate. Wuming nodded. Oh, so that means it's fine even if I don't obtain the Holy Grail? What a coincidence. I don't need the Holy Grail, but my master does. Although he's quite annoying, he's still my master. I'll help him out a little. Then Cuculin flashed his staff. Come and fight with me, Sierra. Chapter 324. Wuming finally knew why Cuculin joined the Holy Grail War. This guy simply wanted to fight against the heroes of history. Looking at Cuculin, who was rushing over with his staff raised, Wuming helplessly picked up his weapon as an assassin, two unusually gorgeous daggers. Wuming didn't complain about why these two daggers were so beautiful. Why would an assassin care about whether the weapon was beautiful or not? Ahem, at least it was easy to use. Wuming swung his daggers and met Cuculin, who was attacking with his staff. Wuming and Cuculin were really two weirdos. Originally, they both used guns, but one turned into a wooden stick and the other into a dagger. Needless to say, the wooden stick was considered a long weapon and could be used as a spear. However, Wu Ming had never used a dagger or similar weapon before. However, bang bang bang, the dagger and the staff collided with each other, making a sound of steel colliding. Wu Ming and Cuculin's figures were constantly changing, waving their arms at a speed invisible to ordinary people, constantly attacking each other. Wu Ming usually used a sword or a gun. Although Wu Ming had never used a dagger, don't forget that Wu Ming's teacher was the queen of the demon realm, the god slayer who had trained countless heroes. Skaha. Daggers and other short weapons were naturally on Skaha's schedule to train Wu Ming. Moreover, Wu Ming was gradually suppressing Cuculin. With a feint, Cuculin escaped from Wu Ming's entanglement. I can only say that you are indeed my senior. Even after becoming an assassin, your attributes are still not low. Cuculin smiled helplessly. You, on the other hand, have your attributes dropped so much because you became a caster? Wu Ming held his daggers with both hands and stood not far away from Cuculin. Through the fight, Silent Wonder could clearly sense that Cuculin's strength and durability were quite low, at least much lower than Silent Wonder's current attributes. He estimated that Cuculin's strength and durability were either D or E, while Silent Wonder, as Assassin Jack the Ripper, had strength and durability of C level. Only dexterity can compete with me. And this is because you used the Lune Rune to strengthen yourself. Yes, as the first magic that Wu Ming learned, the Lune magic, was naturally very familiar with it. Although Wu Ming didn't use it much, it didn't mean that Wu Ming wasn't familiar with the Lune magic. As a mere caster, it was impossible for his dexterity attribute to be high enough to reach a level. In addition, Wu Ming was familiar with the Lune Rune, so he naturally inferred that Cuculin used the Lune Rune. Ah yes, you are indeed my senior. I did use the Lune Rune to strengthen my attributes, but it can only strengthen strength, durability, and dexterity to a level. If I want to fight with you, I can't do it without dexterity. Maybe I will be out of the game in the next second. Cuculin touched his head, not annoyed that Wu Ming had exposed his secret. Obviously, you were summoned as a caster. Not only did you not ambush in your workshop, but you also wanted to fight me in close combat. I'm really convinced by your muscle head. Wu Ming said rather helplessly. Well, since my senior said so, then I will fight with you as a caster. Cuculin waved his hand in the direction of Wu Ming, and a light appeared under Wu Ming's feet. A rather simple and unadorned rune came into sight. This was the Lune Rune that Cuculin had set up during the close combat with Wu Ming, and now it was activated. You know I'm your senior. How could I not notice such an obvious trap? Wu Ming said as he accelerated and jumped away from the light. The moment Wu Ming left, a violent explosion occurred at the position of the rune. The flames of the explosion spread to Wu Ming, who had not completely escaped from the explosion range. The flames raged in the atmosphere, absorbing oxygen and burning fiercely. Wu Ming, on the other hand, disappeared into the flames. Of course, this little trick naturally couldn't kill Wu Ming, and Cuculin doubted whether it could cause any harm to Wu Ming. After all, I also appeared as an assassin. This is the beginning of the Holy Grail War. See you next time, Cuculin. Wu Ming's voice came out from the atmosphere, and then disappeared. Under the cover of the flame explosion, Wu Ming's A+ level aura made Cuculin lose sight of Wu Ming. Well, that's it. With that, Cuculin turned into blue particles and entered the state of spiritualization. That's it. I simply fought a few times with the caster and then retreated. Wu Ming put down his glass and leaned on the sofa. Gilgamesh, on the other hand, looked at Wu Ming with interest. I didn't expect the caster to be your junior. Then again, this junior is related to your identity in other myths. I haven't heard that the Uruk Hyenryong has a junior. Because of interest, Gilgamesh began to shake his legs. Looking at Gilgamesh's shaking legs, Wu Ming said that he couldn't see anything from the armor, so he simply stopped looking. After all, I'm also a traveler. It's not surprising that I know people in other areas. Wu Ming said casually. So, do you have a plan? Gilgamesh asked. Gilgamesh didn't believe that Hyenryong, who had investigated almost all the enemies, didn't have a plan. The Uruk Hyenryong's reputation was not only obtained by protecting the people. As the closest person to Hyenryong, Gilgamesh naturally knew that Hyenryong had a very high strategy. Moreover, this time Wuming appeared in the world as an assassin. Wuming, who didn't have the ability to break through, would definitely choose to use wisdom. However, this time Gilgamesh guessed wrong. I didn't prepare a plan, I just simply investigated the enemy. Wuming waved his hand tiredly. After all, you said that if you wanted to, you could end the Holy Grail War in one night. The key is that there's no need at all. Wuming smiled indifferently as he leaned on the sofa. After Wuming finished speaking, Gilgamesh frowned. What do you mean? Gilgamesh asked. Do you still remember why I came to this world? Wuming hinted. Gilgamesh suddenly realized. After all, Gilgamesh came to this world in the form of occupying a spot in the Holy Grail War. It was inevitable that he would pay a little attention to the Holy Grail War. I almost forgot. You came to this world because of that strange black mud. Yes, Wuming's original purpose was the black mud with origin power, and he participated in the Holy Grail War only because Wuming hadn't discovered the black mud for the time being. Therefore, he suspected that there was something fishy about the Holy Grail War, so he participated. In other words, I just have to wait quietly, wait for the final victor, and then investigate the truth about the black mud. Chapter 325. Of course, although Wuming said that he would wait quietly, Wuming wasn't someone who could just sit around and do nothing, and neither was Gilgamesh. Therefore, Wuming brought Gilgamesh to the amusement park. Well, amusement park, important things must be said twice. Gilgamesh looked like he was holding back his anger, looked at the amusement park in front of him, then looked at the smiling Wuming and said, "You actually let this king come to a place for children. You really have guts. Do you think this king is a child, Hyenryong?" However, Wuming just waved his hand. What does it matter? After all, I watched you grow up, and I can be considered your adoptive father. What's wrong with a father bringing his daughter to the amusement park? Wuming said seriously. Of course, it would be perfect if Gilgamesh didn't stop him from opening the gate of Babylon. Wuming held down Gilgamesh, who was about to open the gate of Babylon, and smiled. Ma Gilgamesh, just treat this as playing with me. You can also experience the feelings of the people while you're at it. Besides, you've never been to an amusement park before, right? Wuming calmly advised, not at all worried that Gilgamesh would pull out his sword and stab him. Humph. Seeing that you are my teacher, this king will accompany you. Gilgamesh shook off Wuming's hand that was pressing down on her arm, with a "I'm being merciful, come and thank me" look on her face. Yes. Thank you for taking the time to accompany me to experience the people's feelings. In Wuming's view, Gilgamesh wasn't angry at all. The gate of Babylon only needed Gilgamesh's consciousness to open. Raising his hand was just a habitual action. In other words, even if Wuming was holding Gilgamesh's hand, Gilgamesh could still open the gate of Babylon if he wanted to. This showed that Gilgamesh wasn't angry. Then please change your clothes. After all, your current appearance is not suitable for experiencing the people's feelings. Wuming pointed to the people around him. They looked at Gilgamesh as if they were looking at a girl who liked to cosplay. In order to avoid trouble, Wuming had already changed his clothes into ordinary casual clothes. He was wearing a white shirt, a black jacket, black pants, and a pair of casual shoes. He wore a cap on his black hair, and his red eyes were emitting a captivating light. This light was deep and distant, and it was quite attractive. He looked quite handsome. Gilgamesh, on the other hand, was still wearing his golden armor, exposing his abdomen. Although it was reasonable to dress like Gilgamesh at the entrance of the amusement park, everyone's attention was still on Gilgamesh's supreme appearance. As a person with 2/3 divinity and 1/3 humanity, Gilgamesh was naturally blessed by the gods. His IQ, appearance, and so on were not comparable to ordinary people at all. Thinking about young Jill, he had a skill called Beautiful Boy in his attribute. Beautiful Boy. CIT was a display of the skill of a beautiful young man that made people want to protect him. Although it had a magic effect that could charm people regardless of gender, it could be avoided by magic skills. Even if there was no magic resistance, the effect could be mitigated if there was resistance. Although Beautiful Boy's skill was only C rank, having this skill meant that his appearance was heaven-defying. And the effect could be said to be even more effective on Shiny Girl. At this moment, it was not an exaggeration to say that Gilgamesh was a peerless beauty. These mongrel cultivators, bastards. How dare they look straight at this king? Gilgamesh seemed to be really angry. Forget it, after all, it's just to experience the people's feelings. It's not like they will lose a piece of meat. By the way, it's better to quickly change your outfit so that you can avoid trouble. Wyrm comforted Gilgamesh. After all, if Gilgamesh felt humiliated and took out his sword, then they would be finished directly. That's true. I'll do as you say today. Gilgamesh's body began to emit light. Gilgamesh wanted to change his outfit here. After Wyrm saw it, he directly pulled Gilgamesh and ran away. When the passers-by saw the blonde beauty's boyfriend pulling the beauty away, they only felt a little regretful that there was no beauty to see. Then they began to busy themselves with their own things. A moment later, Gilgamesh and Wyrm returned to the entrance of the amusement park. Why does this king have to hide and change his outfit? This king is the hero king, Gilgamesh. If he wants to hide, it should be these bastards. Gilgamesh said unhappily. After all, Wyrm suddenly pulled Gilgamesh's hand. Wyrm was still wondering why Gilgamesh did not get angry, but now it seemed that his anger was delayed. Well, don't forget the hidden rules of the Holy Grail War. Just put up with it. Wyrm wiped the non-existent cold sweat. Gilgamesh looked at his hand that was pulled by Wyrm, and then looked at Wyrm in a good mood. This king forgives your rudeness. Then, as if he thought of something, Gilgamesh looked at Wyrm slyly. So, Hyenryong, what do you think of this king's outfit? Gilgamesh said as he moved closer to Wyrm. Wyrm looked at Gilgamesh's current outfit. The upper body was a white shirt with a black woman's jacket, but it still could not hide the queen's towering breasts. The lower body was a short skirt, black silk stockings, and a pair of high boots, which showed off the queen's slender legs. Long golden hair without any impurities was casually spread out and draped over her back. Her beautiful face was breathtaking, and her red pupils, similar to Wyrm's, exuded a lofty arrogance. She had the proper queen style. However, aren't you wearing the same type of clothes as me? Wyrm was slightly puzzled. The two of them were dressed like a couple, and with their red pupils, if it were not for their different hair colors, they would be siblings or siblings. What's wrong with that? You're my teacher. There's nothing wrong with wearing the same clothes as my teacher. Gilgamesh frowned slightly, and a trace of displeasure appeared on his peerless face. That's not a big deal, but the problem is that it's even more eye-catching now. Wyrm said helplessly, and pointed at the crowd around them. Gilgamesh looked around, and realized that the people who were busy with their own things had all stopped what they were doing, and were staring blankly at Wyrm and Gilgamesh. To be precise, they were looking at Gilgamesh alone. This group of mongrel cultivators, trash. In an instant, golden ripples appeared, and countless relics appeared. Wait a minute. Wyrm's panicked voice resounded through the sky. Chapter 326. In the amusement park, Gilgamesh walked while licking his ice cream, while Wyrm followed Gilgamesh with a tired face. At the entrance of the amusement park, Wyrm stopped Gilgamesh's noble phantasm, and used a simple hypnosis magic to hypnotize everyone at the scene, and erase their memories. Then Wyrm cast a simple magic to reduce his presence on Gilgamesh, and quickly ran away with Nyang Shanshan. Although Wyrm, as Jack the Ripper, shouldn't be able to use magic due to his class, but he couldn't stop Wyrm the cheater. The servant's body was Wyrm's avatar in the Great Source. All the noble phantasm was on the main body, and the noble phantasm on the servant's body was only the avatar of Wyrm's noble phantasm. The assassin class was because the Great Holy Grail captured Wyrm's adaptability to that class, so it recreated Jack the Ripper's noble phantasm. But because of Wyrm's cheating, the power of Source, Wyrm's Jack the Ripper was not pure Jack the Ripper, but a new version of Jack the Ripper that was mixed with some other things. That was why Wyrm's assassin class had some attributes, skills, and noble phantasm that didn't belong to Jack the Ripper. However, cheating on a large scale was not advisable, Even if it was Wuming, he couldn't violate the rules of the servant class too much. Therefore, Wuming cheated a little, so that Jack the Ripper, who originally couldn't use magic, could use some small magic. Needless to say, the magic of dispel, suggestion, and reducing one's presence was really useful. After that, Wuming bought an ice cream for Jusama to comfort Jusama's dignity. Gilgamesh, who was walking in front, looked at Wuming, who was quite tired, thought for a moment, and threw the ice cream in his hand behind him. Naturally, Wuming was able to react in time, and caught it in one go. "Gil, what are you doing?" Wuming looked at the ice cream somewhat puzzled. "This king has decided to reward you properly. I'll leave the leftover ice cream to you." Gilgamesh swung his elegant blonde hair, and said in a tone that brooked no refusal, "Huh? Are you kidding me?" Wuming looked at the half-melted ice cream helplessly. "What, you're not satisfied?" Gilgamesh turned around and stared at Wuming with her beautiful red eyes. Wuming's eyes revealed the meaning of "if you say no, you're done for." How could that be? Wuming scratched the back of his head awkwardly. "Humph. Then, is there anything for this king to play?" Gilgamesh snorted, turned her head, and scanned the entire amusement park. Wuming thought for a moment, then proposed. "Since you, Gil, haven't played before, then let us all experience it. Well, let this king see what's so attractive about these boring devices." With that said, Gilgamesh took Wuming's hand and walked towards a certain project. The sign in front of them had the words roller coaster written on it. Wait a minute, don't pull me." "Shut up, this is your punishment for pulling this king's hand just now." Yes, your majesty." On the roller coaster that had already started, Wuming enjoyed the cool breeze brought by the roller coaster, and couldn't help but think of Mayu and the others. He still remembered when Wuming brought Mayu, Ilya, and Little Black to the amusement park to play. Ilya and Mayu were instigated by Little Black and were half forced to play on the roller coaster. As a result, when the roller coaster started, Ilya was so scared that she cried and screamed. Mayu was fine, but her face was also pale. In the end, during the roller coaster ride, Ilya and Mayu gradually got used to it, scaring Little Black quite a bit. Looking at Wuming's smiling face, Gilgamesh, who was sitting with Wuming, frowned but didn't say anything. After that, Wuming and Gilgamesh tried the various projects in the amusement park one by one. In the blink of an eye, it was already afternoon, and the amusement park was closed. Because the two of them came at noon, there wasn't enough time. At the entrance of the closed amusement park, Wuming looked happy as if he was reminiscing about the past. Gilgamesh, on the other hand, looked bored. Those things are only suitable for civilians to play. Like the roller coaster, that speed can't even compare to Vimana. I really don't know what's there to be happy about. Hearing Gilgamesh's complaint, Wuming, who was walking side by side with Gilgamesh, looked at Gilgamesh. Well, Gil is the hero king. It's normal for him to be bored by these projects. To be honest, compared to the exciting facilities in the amusement park, combat can stimulate Gilgamesh's desire more. This is a fact. Gilgamesh, who has fully adapted to combat and surprise attacks, can't feel excited by the amusement park's projects. Although that's true, but Gil was also scared in the haunted house before. Wuming smiled mischievously. Because he saw that Gilgamesh didn't care much about the projects, Wuming used the opportunity to enter the haunted house to personally scare Gilgamesh. It can only be said that Gilgamesh still has the weakness of a young girl. Although Gilgamesh only frowned at the time, but from the release of the Gate of Babylon, it can be seen that Gilgamesh was really scared at that time. Cheap joke, this king is particularly annoying, Gilgamesh said proudly. Well, experiencing all kinds of emotions, this is what a king needs to do. Didn't I teach you? Wuming smiled, then pulled Gilgamesh's hand. Let's go home and prepare an unprecedented feast for our long-awaited disciple. Humph. For you to hold this king's hand without permission. This king will not care this time, but if this dinner tonight is not to this king's liking, then you are finished, Hien Ryong. Yes, I know, let's go, my king. The setting sun shone on the man and woman. The two people's shadows were getting longer and longer, farther and farther. At night, Wuming turned into a night walker and shuttled through the streets. Soon, Wuming stopped at the house on the side of the street. Because Wuming felt a battle intent, that's right, That's the battle intent of a servant. Suddenly, on the top of the building where Wuming was, on the street lamp beside the house, golden particles appeared, and Gilgamesh, who had recovered his golden armor, appeared. It's just a hyena's howl. Why do you want to go? Gilgamesh said rather disdainfully. It's not too much to go and have a look. The last saber swordsman is probably here. This battle intent is probably the invitation sent by saber swordsman. I'm very interested. Wuming pressed his top hat and said calmly, to be able to see a good show, this king doesn't mind being a spectator for once. With that said, Gilgamesh turned into golden particles and disappeared in spirit form. Wuming activated the aura barrier and quickly went to the place where the battle intent originated, Winterwood Beach. Chapter 327. Wuming activated his aura block and hid near the beach, while Gilgamesh hid behind a street lamp in his spiritual form. Wuming looked at the center of the beach. There was a blonde woman in black armor with a black mask on her face and a black holy sword in her hand. There was no doubt that this was Saber Swordsman, but it was still someone Wuming was familiar with. Artoria. Wuming frowned. Although Saber did not match Artoria's attribute dark, but whether it was the dark holy sword in her hand or the familiar face under the mask, it all proved that she was indeed the Artoria he knew. It can't be wrong. That is Artoria. After carefully examining the dark holy sword in her hand, Wuming confirmed. But how did Artoria become like that? Wuming felt a little sad. Artoria was Wuming's first disciple, and Wuming liked this little girl, especially compared to the current Gil. However, the Artoria who appeared in front of Wuming at this moment was exuding a strong dark aura, and Wuming did not find anyone else around Artoria. Wuming suspected that Artoria's dark was caused by the destruction of her country. Wuming had checked, and with the British silver dragon, which was the historical record of Wuming's Britain, Artoria's country was destroyed in the end. With Wuming in Britain, the people lived and worked in peace. However, because of Wuming's disappearance, although Artoria did not send out knights to search for the Holy Grail like crazy, she still sent out a lot of knights. The knights who cared about Wuming were also very willing to search for the Holy Grail. However, due to Wuming's departure, Merlin's being trapped in Avalon, he deserved it, and Artoria's lack of power, the ambitious dukes began to target Artoria. Because of Guinevere's longing for Wuming, Morgan and the nobles used this as a fuse to put Guinevere on trial. After all, that era did not allow someone like Guinevere to exist. With the nobles as the leader and the church as support, the trial for Guinevere was carried out. Although the Knight of the Lake, Lancelot, forced the princess to escape, Guinevere, who was condemned, came back and was willing to be punished. Artoria was exhausted and could not go against the era and the rumors of the people, so she had no choice but to burn Guinevere at the stake. The historical records were not very detailed. Lancelot robbed the execution ground and fought with the few remaining knights. Although he managed to escape, he was severely injured. The other knights suffered the same fate and suffered heavy casualties. The knight's faith, the departure of the British silver dragon, the disappearance of the Archmage Merlin, Artoria's inaction, Morgan's secret instigation, Guinevere's incident, the Knights of the Round Table killing each other, and the disappointment in the king. All of these led to the destruction of Britain. Artoria's expedition to Rome led to the rebellion of the Knight Mordred, and the conspiracy of the nobles led by Morgan led to the Battle of Camlan. Originally, Silent Wonder thought that Artoria had turned into a dark form because of this, but it turned out that this was not the case. The thick darkness that clung to Artoria's body was like the evil of this world in the Eastwood Holy Grail. That's right. Wuming had previously investigated the interior of the Holy Grail in Winterwood City. The magic in the Holy Grail had all turned into the evil of this world, and its form was some black mud. Artoria's body was full of the evil of this world, as if she had been soaking in it for a long time. What the hell is going on? Does it have something to do with the Great Holy Grail in Winterwood City? After all, Wuming was an assassin without magic, so Wuming did not set up any detection spell in the Great Holy Grail in Winterwood City. However, Wuming had been checking the Great Holy Grail from time to time for the past 2 days. After all, the evil of this world in the Great Holy Grail was also a threat to Winterwood City. If it was released, it would be troublesome. Wuming became serious when he saw Artoria's dark form. It seems that I have to check the Great Holy Grail later, Wuming thought. At this time Artoria, who was standing on the beach, opened her mouth. You're here, you rascals. Since you're here, don't hide. You'll lose the chance to fight me. I, the Night King Artoria Pendragon, disdain to be associated with you. Sure enough, it's Yulia. Wuming was completely sure when he heard Artoria's voice. Artoria said something that was unclear, but Wuming knew one thing. That was, Artoria was trying to anger the servants who had come to the beach. In Wuming's perception, including Artoria and Wuming himself, there were a total of 7 servants here. That was why Artoria was provoking them. It seems that Artoria wants to kill everyone in one go. She's quite arrogant, just like Gil. Wuming smiled and looked at Artoria, who was standing in the center of the stage. So, who will show up for King Arthur's provocation? Wuming waited with interest. So that's how it is, the famous King Arthur? Then, I can't lose my reputation. Accompanied by a deep voice, a brown figure appeared. The clothes of the West Asian style looked particularly cool. A pair of decorative horns were worn on his head. His strong facial features and strong physique showed that this person was strong. I'm also a king. This time, I'm here as a rider. Please advise me, spare. The muscular rider was quite polite. He was not arrogant like the other kings. Are you the only one, rider? Are the others just cowards? Artoria shouted loudly to provoke the other servants who were hiding. And it seemed that Artoria's provocation worked. Humph. In just one night, there were 2 more mongrel cultivators, scumbags, proclaiming themselves kings. You really don't put this king in your eyes. Gilgamesh removed his spiritual form and showed his figure, standing on the street lamp and despising Artoria and Ryder. I can't continue to hide. A rather frivolous voice came, blue particles condensed, and Cuchulain appeared wearing a sage robe. Yo, I'm Castor, here at Saber's call. Looking at Cuchulain's sloppy appearance, Wuming helplessly touched his forehead. I knew it would be these 2 who would come out. After all, Gilgamesh's dignity did not allow others to provoke him again and again. Plus, the 2 kings provoked Gilgamesh, the only king. Gilgamesh would naturally show up. And Cuchulain did not show up in the first place. Wuming guessed that it had something to do with his master. Of course, as a caster, his mind calmed down a little. It's quite interesting. Let's not talk about Assassin and Berserker. Lancer also doesn't show up? Anyway, there are 3 knights. Artoria said without arrogance. Thank you. Chapter 328. Thank you for your respect. A relaxed, lowly voice was heard. A young girl wearing a cloak and holding a scythe in her hand came out of spiritual form and appeared in front of everyone. The large cloak covered most of the girl's delicate body. Her long purple hair was braided behind her head, and the front part of her long hair casually hung down from the cloak. Although the cloak covered most of the girl's body, one could still vaguely see the girl's petite body. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was a young girl. Oh, Lancer, it's a little girl. Are you interested in a cup of tea? It could only be said that Cuchulain was really good at flirting with women. After all, Cuchulain was still Cuchulain. Whether it was a Lancer or a caster, he would not change. Please allow me to refuse, pervert. Lancer refused without hesitation. She made a clear voice like a newborn baby. Very good, except for Berserker and Assassin. Is everyone here? Artoria nodded with satisfaction and put her hands on the invisible holy sword in front of her. Well then, let us decide the victor tonight, heroes. After that, Artoria suddenly released her magical power. The surging magical power overturned the sand on the beach. It looked quite domineering. You really dare to say that, Saber? Cuchulain said, not to be outdone. But it's not a bad idea. Ryder crossed her arms in front of her chest and said rather sullenly. Humph. Gilgamesh did not say anything. He just looked down with a look of amusement. Lancer, on the other hand, was silent. Apparently, she agreed with Spare's proposal. That's right, it saves us a lot of trouble. Are you here, Assassin? Come out and fight with me. I know you can't be restrained by a mere assassin. Cuchulain shouted to the surrounding. The other servants seemed to be interested in the assassin, and were not in a hurry to start a fight. Seriously, this idiot, is it because Sierra remembered me? Wuming, who was hiding in the dark, said with a headache. After Wuming left Cuculin, the intelligence erase skill was indeed activated. Cuculin did not remember any information about assassin. However, this did not stop Cuculin from knowing Wuming's other identity. He was the eldest disciple of the Queen of the Demonic Realm, Cuculin Sr., the warrior of Connaught, and the Tyrannosaurus of Queen Maeve. Information erasure only targeted information about assassin, which meant that it targeted information about Jack the Ripper. Because Cuculin had seen Wuming before, even if he lost any information about Jack the Ripper, he still knew that assassin was his senior. It was the same as Wuming knowing that Castor was Cuculin. Both sides only remembered the information of the other side when they were holding guns. For now, both sides only knew who the other side was. Of course, Wuming, who had learned the Loon magic trick, naturally had an advantage over Cuculin. After that, Wuming also lost interest in continuing to hide. He gently jumped and revealed himself. "You are really an idiot, Castor," Wuming complained. "Ha ha ha, anyway, I am very satisfied to be able to fight with you." Cuculin was not angry, but laughed and looked at Wuming full of fighting spirit. "So let me introduce myself first. I am Jack the Ripper. This time, I came here as an assassin. Please advise me." Wuming did not pay attention to Cuculin. Instead, he introduced himself and even exposed his real name. Ryder frowned as if he was not satisfied that a murderer could be on the same stage as them. However, after thinking about it, he was an assassin after all. It could be said that his courage was commendable. "Although I admire you directly, it is undoubtedly extremely stupid for you to expose yourself as an assassin," Ryder said dully. As for the others, Lancer did not speak much at the beginning and did not say anything. Gilgamesh was very dissatisfied with Ryder's evaluation of Wuming and looked at Ryder with murderous eyes. As for Artoria, since Wuming appeared, she fell into silence. "So, you are the assassin of this Holy Grail war," Artoria said without understanding the meaning, but she had been staring at Wuming with a complicated look. Wuming certainly knew why Artoria was looking at him like that. Without thinking, Artoria also recognized his identity. "That saber over there, he's this king's possession, teacher. Put away your invasive gaze." Gilgamesh saw that Artoria's eyes were a little strange when she looked at Wuming, so he said rather grumpily, "Is that so? Archer, although I don't know how you came to this conclusion, but he is my possession, knight." Artoria stared at Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh did not show any weakness and stared back at Artoria. "Hey, what's going on? Why do I feel that Saber and Archer are about to fight because of you?" Cuculin said jokingly. Wuming's response was only silence. Could this be the legendary Shiraba? Wuming thought with some uncertainty, and he even swallowed a mouthful of saliva. "It's none of your business, Castor. Do you want to leave as soon as possible?" Wuming stared at Cuculin fiercely. However, Cuculin picked up his staff and spun it twice. "I can't wait." Then he looked at Wuming full of fighting spirit. As a last resort, 2 daggers suddenly appeared in Wuming's vertical hands, which slipped out from Wuming's sleeves. "Then let me teach you a good lesson." On the other side, Lancer looked at Ryder, who was now vacant. "What, do you want to fight me?" Ryder looked at Lancer calmly. And at this moment, rustle, rustle, rustle. A roar that did not seem to be human came. Holding a strange stone weapon that looked like an axe and a knife, the 3-meter-tall little giant roared and jumped into the beach. "Rustle, rustle, rustle." He roared again, turned his eyes to Lancer, and rushed up. TSK, the hero who killed the monster and the monster who was killed by the hero were swapped. "How ironic," Lancer said softly and rushed up to Berserker. "I say, aren't you guys looking down on me a little too much?" In an instant, Ryder jumped fiercely and instantly jumped between Berserker and Lancer. Lancer was rational enough to stop, but the irrational Berserker would not do the same. Berserker raised the axe in his hand and slammed it down toward Ryder. Looking at the way his muscles were tied, he must be a servant with high strength or even monster strength attribute skills. Ryder would be injured if he did not die. But clank. A long bone stick like an elephant's trunk stretched out from the ground and blocked Berserker's attack. Rustle! Rustle! Berserker roared angrily because his attack was blocked. As expected of the irrational Berserker. In fact, I'm more suitable for this class, Ryder said lightly. Then, the bone colossus swung its trunk and flung Berserker away in an unbelievable manner. Then, Ryder looked at Lancer, and Lancer raised her scythe vigilantly. Since I can't fight with my old enemy, I'll fight with you guys. Ryder showed a tyrannical smile. His dark face revealed his big white teeth. Looking at the Berserker's smile, Lancer seemed to know why Ryder said that he was suitable for the Berserker class. Chapter 329. The timeline was pushed back to the day. In Osaka House. The manager of Winterwood City, Enosaka Tashiomi, elegantly held a glass of red wine with one hand behind his back. He stood in front of the window and looked into the distance. His eyebrows were full of haze. On the back of his hand that was holding the red wine, 3 scarlet incantations were engraved like mysterious circles. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Please come in, Enosaka Tashiomi said. Creak. The door opened with the sound of the door opening. A young priest walked in. If Wuming was here, he would definitely recognize him. He was the priest that Wuming met at the Chinese restaurant that day. His name was Yen Fengkiri, the son of the old priest that Wuming met at the church in Winterwood City. Kiri, what's the matter? Enosaka Tashiomi turned around and looked. The haze between his eyebrows disappeared a lot. Sensei, a suspected servant, was found near Tabaki Amusement Park. Yen Fengkiri said very respectfully. Is it confirmed? Enosaka Tashiomi said seriously. Yes, according to my father's information. It is currently confirmed to be Archer. It is very likely to be a king. Yen Fengkiri said carefully, afraid to make his sensei angry. Sure enough, after Enosaka Tashiomi heard it, the haze between his eyebrows gathered again. It was taken by others. I was too careless. I didn't expect that in addition to the world's first snake fossil, there would be a holy relic that could make the most ancient king appear. Enosaka Tashiomi said rather angrily. However, this is also expected. Calm down. But in an instant, Enosaka Tashiomi calmed down. After all, the Enosaka family's motto was to always be elegant. However, Yen Fengkiri had a feeling that Enosaka Tashiomi was holding on. That's right. Teacher has successfully summoned another king. Yen Feng and Chili flattered from the side. However, Enosaka Tashiomi's expression at the moment was somewhat helpless. In an instant, brown particles appeared. Ryder dispelled his spiritual form and stood beside Enosaka Tashiomi. I know you are disappointed to summon me. Ryder's dull voice came. No. How could that be, my king? Tashiomi Inaka bowed to Ryder. After all, your original target was the ancient king. I'm nothing compared to the ancient king. I can't even compare to my rival, the one from the Macedonian kingdom, Ryder said in a low voice, although it seemed like he was belittling himself. Your Majesty. How could Tashiomi Inaka not know? The king in front of him was indeed inferior to the oldest king, and the difference was huge. You don't have to say too much. The only thing I can do is to help you obtain victory in the Holy Grail War, and fulfill my own wish of being able to fight against my old enemy once again. After saying that, Ryder's mind went blank as he thought about his formidable enemy. After saying that, Ryder's spirit form disappeared. After noticing that Ryder had left the room, Yen Fengkiri was slightly puzzled. Teacher, since the king is weak, why did you summon this king? Taking a look at Yen Fengqi, Tashiomi turned his head and looked into the distance again. Chili, Ryder's combat power is indeed inferior to the ancient king, but don't underestimate him. Tashiomi Inaka maintained his smile. Yen Fengqi still didn't understand, but he knew that at least Ryder wasn't as mediocre as his appearance suggested. The most important thing is that Ryder is very obedient. Yen Fengqi suddenly understood. Tashiomi Inaka continued to smile as he looked into the distance. The Holy Grail. A Mito residence. In the house that was completely normal, Lancer sat on the sofa and watched TV. After a while, a soft and gentle voice came. That Sister Anna, the food is ready. Come and eat together. A black-haired loli with energetic eyes stuck her head out and looked at Lancer, who was sitting on the sofa. The black-haired loli was Sakura Inaka. Because she was adopted by the Amito family, she changed her name to Sakura Madu. Okay, I know, Anna said faintly and sat at the table with Sakura Madu. Although servants didn't need to eat, Lancer still ate like an ordinary person to make his little master more relaxed. Sakura Madu looked at Lancer, who buried his head in eating, then looked at the command seal on the back of her hand and smiled. I'm so happy to be able to meet Sister Anna, Sakura Madu said. However, the young Sakura Madu didn't notice that Lancer, who was sitting opposite Sakura Madu, was shocked, but he quickly returned to normal. After dinner, Sakura Madu took the initiative to clean up the dishes. Then Sister Anna, I'll go to the basement later and clean it up, Sakura Madu said softly. This was because Tongying had been doing this for the past few days. She had been cleaning the rocks. The basement is full of stones. I'll go to the basement to clean up all the stones. Suddenly Lancer said. Oh, is that okay? I want to let Sister Anna rest more. Sister Anna saved me. I can do these things. Sister Anna just needs to participate in the Holy Grail War, Sakura Madu said worriedly, and then looked at Lancer with a smile. Lancer couldn't help but look at Sakura Madu and remembered the scene when he was summoned. Countless insects were rolling over. A skinny and terrifying old man threw Sakura Madu into the insect pile, and a man struggled to summon a servant. However, Lancer found that he was summoned by Sakura Madu, but the summoning magic was provided by that man. Gagaga. Yinya, I didn't think that your death could be useful. Very well, then let Sakura fight in your place. The skinny and terrifying old man made a strange laugh. However, swoosh. With the flash of the sword, Sakura Madu, who was not transformed by the insects, found that the squirming insects stopped moving. Suddenly, Tongying opened her eyes, which had been shut in fright, and looked at the cloaked young lady in front of her. Sister, are you here to save me? Sakura Madu's little face was crying and looked at Lancer blankly. Yes, my name is Anna. Lancer looked at Sakura Madu's crying face and was slightly moved. Gagaga. Unknown servant, I think it's better if you cooperate with me. This way, you and I can get the Holy Grail. The skinny and terrifying old man was obviously a magician, but he was not afraid of the dangerous weapon called servant at all. Lancer glanced at the old man and held Sakura Madu in his arms. Then the sickle in his hand moved, and the old man was instantly dismembered. Gagaga. Unknown servant, you are indeed strong, but this is my magic workshop. Since you don't want to cooperate, then be devoured by my insects. The old man's hoarse and terrifying voice came from all around. In an instant, countless insects ran out of nowhere and rushed to Lancer. Lancer held Sakura Madu in one hand and covered her face, trying not to let Sakura Madu see these insects. Then Lancer directly took off the hood of his cloak, and two golden pupils like a horizontal cuboid looked at these insects. In an instant, countless things that were seen by this pair of eyes were petrified. What? Magic eye. And it's a gem? Then in the old man's surprised voice, all the basement was petrified. Gagaga. Do you think you can kill me like this? Too naive. I won't be polite and will take your pair of demonic eyes. Although everything in the basement was petrified, the old man's voice still echoed in the basement. Is that so? Lancer said faintly. Then he raised the sickle in his hand and slashed at the man who summoned him before. Ah, what's going on? How did you find me? A fat and disgusting insect fell out of the man's heart. It had to be said that the servant summoned at the cost of his own life was indeed powerful. Lancer easily sensed something hidden in the dead man's heart. Goodbye. Lancer looked at the fat insect with his magic eye. Lancer's calm voice was full of serenity. No. How can this be? My trace. The voice stopped abruptly, and the fat insect was petrified. Lancer held Sakura Madu and walked step by step toward the basement door. Bang. When he walked near the statue of the fat insect, the statue broke. Chapter 330. After coming back to his senses, Lancer glanced at Tongying. You don't have to do that anymore. Have a good rest. After all, you are my master. Lancer said lightly and turned his head away. He didn't dare to look at Sakura Madu. Sakura Madu froze for a moment, then showed a smile. I like Anna Nasen the most, Sakura Madu said and threw herself into Lancer's arms. Lancer hugged Sakura Madu and looked at Sakura Madu's smiling face. He was stunned for a moment and hugged Sakura Madu. I will protect you, Sakura. Amiya Mansion. Amiya Kiritsugu cleaned the gun and performed the daily maintenance. Skillfully disassembled, skillfully installed, and with a few clicks, the gun that was originally disassembled was reassembled. Then a woman came in. What's wrong, Mommy? Amiya Kiritsugu asked without looking back. Mommy could be regarded as his most trusted person, so there was no need to be vigilant. Berserker seems to have found the enemy. It should be assassin. The woman named Mommy Q said. Amiya Kiritsugu frowned. Although Amiya Kiritsugu didn't want to use this place as a stronghold, it was just a temporary base, but he didn't expect it to be discovered by the enemy servant so quickly. It seems that assassin has a unique ability in detection. Amiya Kiritsugu stood up. Wuming expressed his helplessness. He just wanted to come back and have a look. Let Berserker be the bait and see if it can lead the enemy away. Amiya Kiritsugu said and picked up the gun and equipped it. Yes. Mommy Q went out. Then, she looked at the red mark on the back of her hand. The mark was quite eye-catching. It was 3 strange command seals. Amiya Kiritsugu wore gloves to cover the mark. Soon Takeo Juyu returned. Did something happen? Amiya Kiritsugu asked. No, assassin retreated by herself, Takeo Kuyu said. Hurry up and leave this place. Find another base. Amiya Kiritsugu frowned. Yes. Amiya Kiritsugu took Kuyu Mamie and the spiritualized berserker to find a new base. Because he wasn't sure if there was an assassin following them. Amiya Kiritsugu arranged a simple detection technique around them. Although it might not be useful against assassin, it was better than nothing. After taking a break, Amiya Kiritsugu lit a cigarette. Kiritsugu, madam. Kuyu Takei said worriedly. If nothing goes wrong, we'll arrive soon. Amiya Kiritsugu puffed out a mouthful of smoke. It was obvious that he was an old smoker. Then I'll go to the airport to check. Amiya Kiritsugu nodded, and then Takeo Kuyu Takei left. Only Amiya Kiritsugu was left in the room. It's just that I always have a bad feeling. After a while, Takeo Kuyu Takei came back anxiously. Not good, Kiritsugu. Something happened to madam. Amiya Kiritsugu closed his eyes helplessly. At night, Amiya Kiritsugu took Takeo Kuyu Takei to the beach. According to Takeo Kuyu Takei's report, Saber came here as soon as they got off the plane. Amiya Kiritsugu came alone to a tall building with a panoramic view of the beach. Takeo Kuyu Takei lurked near the beach with the spiritualized berserker. Picking up the sniper rifle, Amiya Kiritsugu saw Saber. An unknown black armor covered Saber's whole body, and a faint black mist spread from Saber's body. Only Saber's master, Amiya Kiritsugu's wife, Alice Phil, was missing. Saber is different from before. Ali disappeared. What's going on? Amiya Kiritsugu said rather irritably. Yes, Saber's master was Alice Phil, not Amiya Kiritsugu. The House of Einstein Barons wanted to hire the magician killer Amiya Kiritsugu to carry out this Holy Grail war. Because of money, Amiya Kiritsugu accepted the hire and married into the House of Einstein Barons. After a few years of getting along, Amiya Kiritsugu and Alice Phil had sparks of love, and the two had children. However, when summoning servants a few days ago, Alice Phil was suddenly chosen by the Holy Grail, and a stigmata appeared on her hand. Amiya Kiritsugu had been chosen a long time ago, and a stigmata appeared on his hand when he married into the House of Einstein Barons. Therefore, the head of the House of Einstein Barons, Ahad, let the two of them summon servants together. This could be regarded as cheating. But because of this, the House of Einstein Barons had 2 servants, Saber with the best attributes, and Berserker with the strongest combat power. In this way, Amiya Kiritsugu chose to take Berserker, who was not rational and easy to control, to come to Winterwood in Japan in advance and set up an ambush in advance, and Alice Phil came to Winterwood with Saber later. However, according to Kuyu Mamiya's report, Saber got off the plane alone. and there was no trace of Aliceville beside her. And Saber also changed from the original noble Night King to the current appearance. "Ali, where did you go?" Amiya Kiritsugu murmured. In any case, Amiya Kiritsugu only had one goal: to win the Holy Grail War. Looking at the Night King began to provoke the surrounding servants. One after another servants appeared, and even assassin appeared. In that case, Mamiya, let Berserker also participate in the chaos. Amiya Kiritsugu said to the communication device. After all, Amiya Kiritsugu was not a magician who relied on servants. His goal was the master of these servants. Yes. Kuyu Mamiya's voice came from the other side of the communication device. Because of Amiya Kiritsugu's instructions, Kuyu Mamiya could also command Berserker. Seeing Berserker break into the 6 servants, Amiya Kiritsugu picked up the sniper rifle. Except for those special servants, the servants could not be far away from the master, and the other masters must be hiding in the surroundings, near the beach. What Amiya Kiritsugu wanted to do now was to use the 7 servants to lure out the master's traces. Amiya Kiritsugu, who knew Berserker's strength, was not worried that Berserker would have an accident. At worst, he could use the command seal. After all, Berserker was not rational, and there was no need to use the command seal to contain Berserker. At the same time, Sakura Madu was now hiding inside a container on the beach. Although she was afraid, Sakura Madu still looked at Lancer in the distance through the gap of the door. "You hide inside, no matter what happens, don't come out." This was Lancer's first words to Sakura Madu, and Sakura Madu remembered it firmly. "Ananas." Sakura Madu anxiously held her small hand with the command seal, and said anxiously. Of course, this was for Sakura Madu as a child, but for Kenneth as a magician, it was different. He was very hidden. Kenneth and Sora were in a house not far from the beach, and the owner of the house had been hypnotized by Kenneth. Through the familiar, Kenneth could clearly see the big battlefield of the 7 servants. "Is it really okay to let Castor get involved like this, Kenneth?" Sora naturally also had a familiar, and she could also see the scuffle on the beach. After all, the servants of the other masters have already appeared, and Castor also said that he is suitable for the battlefield. Plus I am the head of the house of Akipalud. Naturally, I can't lose the name of the aristocracy. Kenneth said proudly. "As long as you are happy," Sora said indifferently. Although Castor was indeed handsome, Sora was not the kind of person who would casually fall in love with a dead person. She was a proud noble. At this time, the situation on the battlefield changed. Chapter 331. Wuming and Cuculin fought fiercely, but Wuming was gradually losing ground. "Not bad, you guy," Wuming said provocatively, and then suddenly separated from Castor. "Well, after all, this is also a Lunrune trick. Don't say I cheated, brother." Cuculin waved his flaming staff a few times and looked at Wuming proudly. Yes, using the Lunrune to strengthen his weapon, and then using the Lunrune to increase his dexterity to a speed comparable to Wuming's, Cuculin could be said to be suppressing Wuming. After all, the attributes brought by the assassin rank are still too weak, especially in a frontal battle. Wuming said helplessly as he swung the dagger in his hand. Same here, same here. How nice would it be if I could use a gun right now? Compared to magic, I still prefer using a gun." Cuculin looked at Wuming with a wicked smile. "In that case, don't blame me for cheating, Cuculin." Wuming smiled, and the 2 daggers in his hands disappeared. Then a black ripple opened beside Wuming, and in an instant, Wuming inserted his hand into it. "Black ripple? Is this me?" Wuming had the same teacher, so Cuculin naturally knew him very well. Silence had a portable space made of Lune runes, and almost all of his treasures were stored in this space. This was a story passed down in Ireland. Many people didn't know the details, but Cuculin knew that if he was willing to work hard, the so-called Lune rune space could be created. "Yes, this is the space where my treasures are stored, and I can use the weapons inside." Saying so, a smile appeared on his face, but Cuculin felt that this smile was ridiculing him. Whoosh! Wuming pulled out a long spear from the black ripples. The long spear made swishing sounds in the air. "The spear of the world tree, I knew it." Cuculin secretly smacked his lips, with a "I should have known" look on his face. "Don't say that I cheated," This is the benefit of the undead. That's right, Wyrm had taken out the spear of the world tree Yggdrasil. Wyrm meant that the undead could create a clone and turn it into a servant, and it would not restrict itself according to the rank. Fizke, wouldn't that make you a lancer with an assassin rank? Cuchulainn protested. That was right. This was also the reason why Wyrm insisted on keeping the Dragonist relic. All of his weapons and items were inside. This is not the case. My ability value is still assassin's ability value. My skills and relics are also assassins. At best, I can only say that I am an assassin with a long spear. Wyrm was not wrong. At this moment, Wyrm's ability value, skills, and relics were all assassin Jack the Ripper's. Well, take this caster. With Wyrm's shout, the white dragon spear swept towards Cuchulainn. Damn it. Don't underestimate me, this is part of the fun. Cuchulainn was not angry. Instead, he was delighted. He waved his flaming staff and met the swimming dragon spear. At this time, countless explosions were heard, and the storm caused by the explosions stopped both of them. While Cuchulainn and Wyrm were fighting, Rider, Lancer, and Berserker were fighting. At this moment, Rider was standing on a small giant elephant. Countless skeletons poured out of the ground and swept towards Lancer and Berserker. After all, Berserker was not rational. Even if his attributes were quite good, Berserker only cared about the countless skeletons in front of him. However, each of the skeletons could be restored after being broken apart. Rider stood on the giant bone elephant, looked at Berserker indifferently, shook his head, and then looked at Lancer. After all, Lancer was also unable to fight against four hands with two fists. In the face of the skeleton army that appeared almost all the time, Lancer was also barely able to resist. Enosaka Residence. As Enosaka Residence was not far from the beach, Tashimi Enosaka did not need to go there. Instead, he released his familiar to watch Rider's battle on the beach at home. Yenfengchi stood respectfully beside Tashimi Enosaka, and also released his familiar to observe. Chili, you have a lot of doubts, right? Tashimi Enosaka asked elegantly. Yes, sensei. That king is also here. Are you so assured to let Rider cause trouble? Yenfengchi said. That is a king. He has self-respect. Don't worry, Chili. If anything happens, I will use the command spell to summon Rider back. Also, don't underestimate Rider. He is an existence that can be compared to the Conqueror King. Although he is not Archer's opponent, the Holy Grail War is not only a test of servants, but also a battle between magicians. Yenfengchi Enosaka understood Tashimi Enosaka's words. Then sensei, I will go and prepare. How about it? Yenfengchi Enosaka asked respectfully. Okay, go. Yenfengchi Enosaka nodded and left. After Yenfengchi Enosaka left, Tashimi Enosaka's face was gloomy. The reason he let Rider go was because Rider was almost abandoned by Tashimi Enosaka. After all, in front of the king, all servants were ants. The only way was to make a move on the master. I want to see who can summon him before me. I, Tashimi Enosaka, will not be merciful to such a nameless person. However, if Tashimi Enosaka knew that Archer's master was assassin, who knows how happy he would be back on the battlefield. Rider looked at Lancer. In his perception, all the soldiers that were hit by Lancer were unable to recover. A weapon that can restrain immortality. Rider looked at Lancer's scythe and said. His soldiers all had strong immortality and indestructibility. The only disadvantage was that they could be restrained by weapons or attributes that could restrain immortality. It seems that you are not a simple person, Lancer. Rider commented. But don't think that my soldiers are too simple. With that said, the soldiers that attacked Lancer began to change. All the soldiers that were about to be hit by Lancer's scythe split themselves along the incision of the scythe, and then instantly reformed. Lancer's scythe went through them. Lancer was shocked by the strange scene, and was attacked by the reorganized soldiers. Bang! Lancer was heavily hit and flew out. Every soldier was the best of the best. Their strength was generally at the strength of a C class, and some had even reached B class. Lancer quickly got up and rubbed his stomach. He looked at the soldiers that had surrounded him with a complicated expression. Then all of you will turn into stone. Lancer said faintly. He then put his hand on his hat and was about to take off his hood. At this time, countless explosions were heard. Rider and Lancer both looked at the place where the explosions occurred. Berserker was the only one who was still attacking the skeleton soldiers. Chapter 332. Artoria and Gilgamesh were glaring at each other. Even when the others had started fighting, they were still glaring at each other. How vile! This king thought you were a clown. I didn't expect you to be a thief. Do you really want to steal this king's possession, teacher, so badly? Gilgamesh said arrogantly. I don't know where you got that conclusion from, but he is my possession, knight. This will never change. You, on the other hand, are a king? Don't you dare tell me your real name? Artoria sneered at Gilgamesh. Humph. You call yourself king in front of this king. You want to steal this king's possession in front of him. You don't know this king's name in front of this king. You don't deserve to live anymore, Saber. Gilgamesh waved his hand, and several golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. A few relics extended and attacked Artoria. However, bam, 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 bam. Artoria swung the blackened Excalibur and deflected the treasures that were flying toward her. Are they all relics? No wonder you dare to talk nonsense here. Artoria looked at the weapons that were deflected to the side and said in shock. Now you know how powerful this king is. However, this won't change your death. Saber, disappear under my attack. Gilgamesh waved his hand again. This time, dozens of golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. Dozens of relics were flying toward Artoria. How ridiculous, archer. Do you think you can defeat me with just this? Artoria raised her holy sword, and countless magic power gathered on the sword. It looked like she was going to release a relic, but Gilgamesh didn't think so. In the blink of an eye, a huge black magic sword was formed. Artoria raised the black magic sword and swung it lightly. The treasures that were flying towards Artoria were all knocked away. You condensed your noble relic on the sword and didn't use it? Well done, Saber. It would be too boring if you just left like that. Gilgamesh could tell the truth about the Mana Greatsword at a glance. When Wu Ming used his sword, he liked to condense his relic on his sword and not release it. He used it as a giant sword. Well, Artoria learned it from Wu Ming. However, Gilgamesh knew that it was Wu Ming's trick. Therefore, he was even more annoyed when Artoria said that she was his possession. Didn't that prove that they were related? Artoria, on the other hand, did not respond to Gilgamesh's compliment. If that's all you've got, I advise you to return to the Valhalla as soon as possible. In the face of Artoria's ridicule, Gilgamesh was already annoyed by the relationship between Wu Ming and Artoria. Like a fuse, Gilgamesh was furious again. Very well, thief, you've completely angered me. Gilgamesh waved his hands, and his huge chest swayed, which made Artoria a little annoyed. In an instant, countless golden ripples appeared behind Gilgamesh. If one really wanted to count, there were at least hundreds of them. Go to hell, mongrel. Hundreds of relics that were grade B and above bombarded Artoria's place. As the name implied, the beach of Winterwood City was destroyed. The bombardment also affected the other servants. Wu Ming, Cuculin, Rider, and Lancer all stopped what they were doing and looked over. These are all treasures. As a king, Rider could naturally recognize the objects that were being bombarded indiscriminately. Lancer did not speak, but took the opportunity to jump back nimbly, widening the distance between him and Rider, and then left directly. If the 7 servants really fought, Sakura Madu might be affected. Lancer thought so and decided to retreat first. Rider did not want to stop Lancer from leaving. He just glanced at Sakura Madu's place and no longer paid attention to it. He who had summoned countless soldiers had already found Sakura Madu's position. However, due to his dignity as a king, Rider did not attack Sakura Madu. My king, retreat first. There's no need to show your cards here. Toshiomi Inosaka's voice came into Rider's ears. Yes, I know. Then the soldiers and the giant elephant beside Rider sank into the ground and disappeared. Rider, on the other hand, turned into a spirit and left. On the other side, let Berserker retreat. Amiya Kiritsugu said to Kuyumemi on the other side of the communicator. Yes, Kiritsugu. Later, Berserker, who was preparing to attack Gilgamesh because he could not find the target, stopped and jumped away from the beach. On the other side of Wuming. Caster, it's time to retreat. Kenneth's voice came. Yes, I'll go now, master. Cuchulain said rather unhappily. That's not like you. Wuming looked at Cuchulain. I can't help it. I'm a caster now. Compared to fighting, I want to guide my master to the right path. Cuchulain smiled. After becoming a caster, Cuchulain's fighting heart also calmed down. If he did not meet Wuming, he was afraid that Cuchulain would really fight as a caster. But listening to your voice, your master is not the kind of guy who can be guided by you. Wuming didn't attack, but put the gun in his hand into the black ripples. Well, you're right, but since master asked me to leave, then that's it. Next time, let's fight to the death. After saying that, Cuchulain turned into a spirit and left. The reason why Wuming didn't fight with Cuchulain was not that he didn't want to continue to fight with Cuchulain, nor was it that the gunman's mind was in a mess. It was because Artoria and Gilgamesh were both disciples that Wuming cared about. Wuming wouldn't allow them to kill each other. Thinking so, Wuming went to the place where the explosion had already ended and produced countless smoke and dust. At this moment, Artoria, who was in the center of the explosion, was wrapped in a large amount of black magic fog, as if she was a servant incarnate. Enough magic turned into a magic fog to offset Gilgamesh's noble phantasms. Then, Artoria waved the Excalibur, and a huge magic impact dispersed the smoke and dust caused by the explosion. You're quite capable, Saber. You formed a magic defense to offset the explosion caused by my noble phantasms. Although Gilgamesh said so, he was already wary of Artoria. How much magic did she have to be able to defend against the explosion of so many noble phantasms? Anyway, Gilgamesh knew that it was impossible for him to do it. The magic required was too great, unless he had the Holy Grail. Since your attack is over, it's my turn. Artoria said, raising the Excalibur in her hand, and more magic gathered on the holy sword than before. Is this guy's magic infinite? Gilgamesh frowned. Then the golden ripples behind him opened. However, this time, what appeared in the golden ripples was no longer a weapon, but a defensive gear. At this time, two chains suddenly appeared behind Gilgamesh and Artoria, entangling them. Okay, enough is enough. Wuming's voice came. Chapter 333. A black ripple appeared behind Artoria and Gilgamesh, and the chains came out from it. On the other side, Wuming grabbed two chains with one hand, and the chains went into the black ripple. It was the fake Enkidu from Wuming's dragonist. Wuming, who appeared as an assassin, did not bring Enkidu with him. Although the fake Enkidu was not as good as the real Enkidu, it could still play a certain role. Artoria put away the sacred sword, and Gilgamesh put away the gate of Babylon, which was the best proof. Tisk, Gilgamesh looked at the chains that were tightly wrapped around him and said in a displeased tone. Of course, she could tell that this was her friend's avatar, and it was fake. Gilgamesh hated fake avatars the most. Artoria, on the other hand, did not say anything. This fake chain was made with the original Enkidu, so it only kept its special attack mode against divinity, which was why Gilgamesh was wrapped around by the chain. Artoria, on the other hand, had the red dragon blood in her veins. The chain was nothing more than a sturdy chain. Wuming walked between the two and looked at them. Sit down and talk. After all, both of you are my disciples. As soon as Wuming said that, Artoria and Gilgamesh were shocked and looked at each other in disbelief. Wuming, who had almost guessed the result, could only smile awkwardly. The next day, in the small mansion that Wuming bought, Gilgamesh was sitting on his personal chair, looking angry, while Wuming was reading the newspaper in a relaxed manner. A natural gas explosion near the beach in Winterwood City. Why is it always a natural gas explosion? Wuming laughed. At the same time, Wuming looked at Gilgamesh. Since Gilgamesh came back yesterday, Gilgamesh had been throwing a tantrum. Well, a girl throwing a tantrum. If the male version of Gilgamesh was here, Wuming would have slapped him a long time ago. Therefore, girls needed to be coaxed, even if they were his disciples. Is Gilgamesh still angry? Wuming asked softly. Gilgamesh did not say anything. He crossed his arms and closed his eyes. But Wu Ming could understand. First, he hid the fact that Artoria was Wu Ming's disciple, deceit. Then he used Gilgamesh's friend against Gilgamesh, insult, and even defended Artoria from Gilgamesh's point of view. All kinds of signs caused Gilgamesh to be angry, which was understandable. I didn't mean to hide it deliberately. After all, I have experienced too many things. If you told me everything, I would be very busy. As Gilgamesh's teacher, Wu Ming could naturally see what Gilgamesh was upset about. Then Wu Ming continued. And the reason why you used Enkidu was because you were too disobedient. Wu Ming suddenly became strict. Gilgamesh was slightly moved, but he still kept silent. Only his eyes opened. Do you remember our purpose? It's not the Holy Grail War, but to investigate the source of the black mud. It's not wrong for you to blindly go to war with the servants, but there must be a limit to everything. You are easily angered. Wu Ming gently taught Gilgamesh, as if they had returned to the past. As for letting Artoria go, that's because Artoria must be related to our target this time. You know, we should cast a long line to catch a big fish. Wu Ming advised earnestly, hoping that Gilgamesh could accept it. Humph. Even so, it can't make this king calm down. Although Gilgamesh said that, Wu Ming, who knew her well, knew that her anger had mostly dissipated. A Uruk Hyenryong feast. Wu Ming said the name of a set of dishes. Because Wu Ming was a good cook in Uruk, the set of dishes was once famous in Uruk and even in Babylonia. Therefore, almost everyone who tasted it said that if they could eat it again, they would dare to go to hell, which was enough to show Wu Ming's superb cooking. Gilgamesh swallowed, thought for a moment and said, "Deal." Wu Ming showed a victorious smile. Yuanzhong Mountain. Wu Ming came here, and was ready to check the Great Holy Grail again. Is there another source of the black mud? Walking on the way to the Great Holy Grail, Wu Ming thought. After all, the black mud inside the Great Holy Grail was the evil of this world. And as long as there were humans, there was still a source of evil. Then the evil of this world would not go extinct. It could be said that as long as humans existed, the evil of this world would not go extinct. But I always have a bad feeling. When he came to the innermost part of the Great Holy Grail, Wu Ming saw a figure. Artoria. Yes, Wu Ming saw Artoria. Artoria was wearing black armor. Her hands were on the sword inserted in the ground, as if waiting for something. What's going on? Artoria. Wu Ming frowned and asked Artoria. However, Artoria did not speak. She just opened her closed eyes and looked at Wu Ming with her golden eyes full of severity and tyranny. I didn't expect you to find this place, assassin. Suddenly, a man's voice came from the nearby shadow. Hearing this voice, Wu Ming's heart was filled with a sense of crisis. This feeling. Wu Ming instantly took out the meteor silver and looked at the shadow with 200% vigilance. It seems that you're not an ordinary servant. I'm afraid that Jack the Ripper isn't your real name. A young man with a green top hat, a green coat, and a gentle smile, who looked less than 30 years old, came out from the shadow. Although he was smiling, Wu Ming could feel the filth in his body. Wu Ming did not ask, "Who are you?" or anything like that. It was obvious that he was an enemy that would not rest until one of them was dead. With his A-class agility, Wu Ming instantly rushed in front of the tall hat man. And Wu Ming raised his sword, and was about to slash down. However, when Wu Ming's sword was still a little bit away from the tall hat man, Wu Ming's sword was bounced off. Clang! Wu Ming looked at Artoria, who used her black holy sword to bounce off his sword, and quickly retreated. He quickly opened up the distance between them. Artoria put down her holy sword and stood in front of the tall hat man to protect him. This made Wu Ming could not help but frown. Although I don't know why you are so hostile to me, but it seems that I also hate you, assassin. The tall hat man continued to smile as if nothing had happened. Let me introduce myself first. I am Rafe Lionel Florence. Nice to meet you, assassin. Chapter 334. Rafe Lionel Florence. Wu Ming murmured the name softly. Florence? The 72 demon gods. Wu Ming pondered carefully. Was it related to Solomon, or was it just a coincidence? To be honest, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I'm just here to follow the orders of our king. Rafe spread out his hands, showing that he didn't want to fight. But your goal is to destroy the world, right? As long as you have such a goal, you are destined to be my enemy. Wuming raised the meteor silver with one hand and pointed it at Wuming. Haha. You're right. I can't wait to kill you, assassin. Rafe laughed and looked at Wuming with a twisted face. Go, Saber. Rafe ordered, and Artoria rushed toward Wuming. Wuming frowned and raised his sword toward Artoria. Wuming was wondering why Artoria became like this, but it seemed that it was because of this guy named Rafe. Bang, bang, bang. Wuming was knocked away by Artoria's attack. Artoria was a saber, and her attributes were much higher than Wuming's assassin. It could be said that Wuming had never felt so weak before. Artoria didn't chase after Wuming after knocking him away. Wuming steadied himself and didn't rush to fight Artoria. Instead, he looked at Rafe, who was behind Artoria. It seems that you are Saber's master. I'm afraid that her original master has already been killed by you. Rafe laughed when he heard Wuming's words. As expected of you. I knew it. You can't be an ordinary person if you make me feel like I have to kill you. Rafe covered his face with one hand, and his voice came from under his palm. Then Lev removed his hand from his face and looked at Wuming with his twisted eyes. You're right. I've already taken back Saber's master. Recycling? Wuming was a little puzzled, but he did not show it on his face. Lev did not know what Wuming was thinking, nor did he want to know. Instead, he pointed at Artoria. Instantly, Artoria's heart began to glow. A cup could be vaguely seen in her heart. That is, the Holy Grail. Wuming was shocked. There was indeed the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart. Wuming could tell that the Grail in Artoria's heart was complete, which meant that the Grail in the Winterwood Cavern had been inserted into Artoria's heart by Leviticus. Wuming hurriedly asked Kalas to check the Holy Grail in the Yuanzong Mountain Cavern. Without a doubt, the Holy Grail had disappeared. Although he did not know how Lev inserted the Holy Grail into Artoria's heart, there was no doubt that the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart was indeed the Holy Grail. This also explained why Artoria had turned dark. Her heart was filled with the evils of the world, so there was no need to mention her entire being. And no wonder Artoria had almost unlimited magic power. It turned out that the Holy Grail was supporting her. And from Lev's words, it seemed that Artoria's master was the Holy Grail. Wuming thought of Mayu, Ilya and Blackie, which undoubtedly annoyed Wuming. Yes, I gave the Holy Grail to Saber as a trade. Saber will listen to me. What a perfect trade. Lev sighed like a bard. Then, Lev began to speak again. It's so sad, assassin. I was just going to stay here for a while, and leave after completing the task given to me by the king. But you came in without permission. Lev looked at Wuming fiercely. If that's the case, then you can go to hell, assassin. With that said, magic power gathered in Lev's hand, and the Holy Grail in Artoria's heart began to glow. Don't even think about it. Although Wuming did not know what Lev wanted to do, he would not just stand by and watch. However, Saber, release your noble phantasm. Sure enough, Lev was also a smart person. He directly ordered Artoria to release her noble phantasm. Although Wuming did not know whether Artoria was forced to obey Lev's order or not, he was sure that Artoria listened to Lev and began to condense her noble phantasm. Excalibur. Artoria raised the holy sword high, and countless magic power flowed from the fantasy breed's heart into the holy sword. The black light expanded greatly, and then Artoria slashed at Wuming. Wuming looked at the black light in front of him, and a sentence popped up in his heart. Does this count as being chopped? Dong! A loud noise came from inside Yuzong Mountain, and a black light broke out from inside Yuzong Mountain. The black light was enough to cause a disturbance in Winterwood City, but now it did not cause any disturbance. In the midst of the ruins, Wuming struggled to reach out a hand that was wearing a black sleeve. Crash! As the owner of the hand pushed away the rubble, there was a faint sound. Wuming's figure squeezed out of the rubble in a sorry state, and he shook his head. Oh, it hurts. I almost went back to my roots. Wuming sat on the rubble in a sorry state, and he held his head in pain. Master, if you did not activate the inherent barrier at the critical moment, with your current attributes, I'm afraid you would have returned to your original body, Collis, who was on Wuming's head, said. Although Wuming's body was quite broken, the top hat had always been clean. Well. After all, who knew that Artoria could release her noble phantasm in an instant? Wuming laughed. That was right. Logically speaking, the light cannon noble phantasm needed a short time to charge. And without charging, the power of the light cannon noble phantasm was not enough to be compared with a noble phantasm. As for Artoria's instantaneous noble phantasm, it should be a convenience given to her by the Great Holy Grail. Fortunately, Jack's noble phantasm is useful, or else I would be dead. The moment Artoria released her noble phantasm, Wuming activated the inherent barrier, Dark Mist. Although he succeeded in pulling himself into the inherent barrier, he was still sent flying by Artoria. Therefore, even though Wuming looked rather wretched, his foundation was not damaged much. After using magic to repair his body, Wuming began to pay attention to his surroundings. Looking at the burning streets around him, Wuming frowned. I remember that I was sent flying in the direction of Winterwood City, and the burning here does not seem to be caused by me falling. Wuming looked at the burning Dongmu City, and felt a sense of uneasiness as he felt the extremely turbid aura. Then, Wuming jumped onto a tall building that was almost completely burned. Looking around, the entire Winterwood City had turned into a sea of fire. Chapter 335. Bang! Wuming casually sent a skeleton soldier that emerged from the shadows of the building flying. He continued to investigate the surrounding situation. So far, there are no ordinary people in the entire Winterwood City. Did they disappear into thin air? Or were they taken away? Although there were traces of blood and corpses, Wuming checked them and found that they were magicians, not ordinary people. Wuming stopped and did not continue to walk. Everywhere is full of the smell of the black root mud, as if it has been soaked in it. Wuming said in annoyance. No matter what, let's go home and Gil first. Wuming was worried about Gil. After all, the city was now empty, only some skeleton soldiers and ghosts. Maybe the other 6 servants besides Wuming also disappeared. Therefore, Winterwood City was full of contaminated magic. Wuming could not detect the changes in the magic of Winterwood City. That is to say, if there was a battle, Wuming could only hear it through his eyes and ears. Just like now. Wah! What the hell is going on here? A girl's cry for help came. There are still people alive? Wuming's eyes lit up. Let's go and see. With that, Wuming disappeared. On the other side, a white-haired girl was running angrily, and behind her was a group of skeleton soldiers. That's right, a group. This made Wuming, who came here, could not help but blink. Is this guy's lucky? That's right, although there were a lot of skeleton soldiers, Wuming basically encountered the scattered skeleton soldiers in the shadows of some tall buildings. Did the skeleton soldiers know how to hunt the weak together? Thinking like this, Wuming walked toward the girl, and his hands did not stop moving. The girl did not seem to notice the arrival of Wuming. She was an assassin, and continued to run. However, as often happens in melodramatic plots, the girl tripped. Damn it, don't underestimate me. I'm the master of animus. As if going crazy, the girl raised her hands. Of course, she was not surrendering, but she was going to use magic to attack. Gandr. The white-haired girl raised one of her hands and extended her index finger. She then placed her other hand on the hand that had extended her index finger, and a magic array appeared in front of her index finger. A yellow magic bullet shot from the magic circle and hit a skeleton soldier, and the skeleton soldier disappeared in an instant. Is it a Nordic curse magic? Wuming said calmly. This kind of magic was originally a curse that could reduce people's physical ability. If it was serious, it could even kill people, but if there was enough magic power, it could also turn it into a magic bullet. This girl seemed to be a first-class magician. However, for the skeleton soldiers, it was not enough to make them feel the danger. The rest of the skeleton soldiers rushed toward the white-haired girl. Don't underestimate me. The girl continued to shoot Gander, but it could only kill a few skeleton soldiers. At this time, the girl found that there was a skeleton soldier on the electric pole behind her. The girl turned her head and looked at the demonic skeleton. Gandra. The girl panicked and shot magic bullets at the skeleton soldier, but because of the panic, the magic bullets fired by the girl were a little off target, and the skeleton soldier dodged them easily. Facing the skeleton soldiers that fell from the sky, the girl was completely panicked. The girl held her head in fear and closed her eyes in despair. Someone save me. Lev. Klala. Accompanied by the sound of something falling to the ground, the girl found that the expected attack did not come, and even the sound of the skeleton soldiers in front of her disappeared. Ha! The girl slowly opened her eyes and looked at the skeleton soldier behind her. She saw that the skeleton soldier that had just attacked the girl had been divided into 13 pieces like a work of art and scattered on the ground. Then the girl looked at the skeleton soldiers in front of her. All of them were still. A young man wearing a black trench coat, a black top hat, and his hands in his pockets slowly walked out of the skeleton soldiers. Klala. All the skeleton soldiers turned into pieces and scattered on the ground, making a sound. The young girl was startled, and her body shrank back. The young man took off his top hat and made a noble salute to the girl. Although I'm sorry, I'm not the Lev you want, but I can still save you, lady. The girl looked at the young man in front of her blankly and did not speak. On the other side, Cuculin and a rather naked man were fighting. The man wielded a spiral sword and attacked Cuculin, who was holding a magic staff, repeatedly. What's wrong, Cuculin? Can't you fight after becoming a caster? The man continued to attack Cuculin with a smile on his face. Damn it! Since you're mocking me, then take this, Fergus. Cuculin smiled bitterly, then pointed his staff at the man named Fergus. The Loon Rune appeared under the man's feet, and then there was a big explosion. Boom! Cuculin took advantage of the impact of the big explosion to open up the distance, and stood firmly in the distance. Whoosh! Fergus waved the spiral sword in his hand, and the smoke caused by the big explosion dissipated. Then he put the spiral sword on his shoulder. You're really worthy of being called a Loon Rune while fighting. You've become a caster, your brain is also good. Fergus continued to smile and looked at Cuculin. Well, I'm also a caster. And, where did you come from? There are only 7 casters in the Holy Grail War, Fergus Mark Roy. Cuculin looked serious. Since Cuculin and the other 7 casters retreated, the next night, Cuculin's spirit body stayed in the Winterwood Hotel. Suddenly he could not sense his master. Cuculin quickly looked for his master, but there was no one in the Winterwood Hotel. Outside the hotel, Cuculin found that the whole Winterwood city had turned into a sea of fire, and he himself, even without his master, felt the lack of magic power. There was no doubt that the Great Holy Grail had provided him with magic power. Then Fergus came to the door. I don't remember there being 2 sabers in the Holy Grail War. Where's the Night King? Cuculin looked at Fergus seriously. Well, I'm not very clear here. I only know that my master used the Holy Grail to resummon 7 casters, and let us kill all the survivors in the city, including the servants. Fergus shrugged and said indifferently. However, it seems that there are not many living people in this city. I sense the aura of a servant, so I came here. I didn't expect it to be you, Cuculin. Cuculin was shocked by Fergus' words. Not to mention other things, his master had resummoned 7 casters, which meant that there were now 14 casters in Winterwood City. Chapter 336. That is to say, now it's a battle royale between 14 servants. No, it should be 7 servants versus 7 servants. Cuculin laughed maniacally. Well, you're not wrong to say that, but I think it's more like the 7 servants on my side are killing the rest of the servants. Fergus said arrogantly with a smile on his face. Since you're going to leave, I'll tell you, Cuculin. Fergus said, raising the spiral sword in his hand. Your saber belonged to us from the start, and your berserker was too noisy, so we surrounded him and killed him. But to be honest, he's quite capable. Fergus still had a smile on his face. Cuculin felt a sense of crisis in his heart, and he quickly began to draw the Loon Rune. If you can resurrect 11 times, I have nothing to say, but you will still be killed by us. The spiral sword began to emit a strange light. Cuculin, who was familiar with Fergus, knew that it was the precursor of Fergus's noble phantasm. Goodbye, my adopted son and friend Cuchulainn. After that, Fergus waved the shining spiral sword in his hand. Caladbog. With the release of the noble phantasm, a rainbow-like brilliance covered Cuchulainn. Boom. The huge impact brought smoke and dust that covered the sky. So who's next? Fergus said, carrying the released spiral sword, and leaving the Winterwood Hotel. When the smoke and dust dissipated, several high-rise buildings, including the Winterwood Hotel, turned into ruins, as if witnessing the end of the hero Cuchulainn, and as if symbolizing the bravery of the hero Fergus, lying there quietly. On the other side, Wyrm and the white-haired girl walked side by side on the burning abandoned road. The collapse of the Winterwood Hotel and the series of explosions naturally attracted the attention of Wyrm and the white-haired girl. Wyrm frowned and looked in that direction. Cuchulainn, is that you? What happened over there? Assassin, do you know something? The white-haired girl said rather angrily. Maybe it was a fight between servants. Who knows? Wyrm shrugged and did not say anything. Ah. The white-haired girl resisted the urge to curse and touched the necklace around her neck. She didn't say anything and instead smiled happily. It's time to go, Olga. There's still a long way to go to our destination, Wyrm said, walking ahead. Humph. I got it. Also, I'm your master. Can't you just listen to me for once? The girl named Olga didn't say anything in the end. She obediently followed Wyrm and complained. Yes, a master who doesn't have the ability to master. You. Assassin. Wyrm could not help but smile. After Wyrm saved the girl, he generously admitted his identity as the masterless assassin. The girl also told him her name, Olga Marie Animusfia. It sounded like a noble name. Wyrm vaguely remembered this surname when he went to the clock tower. In that case, let's work together. Then he made a suggestion. Wyrm meant to let the girl named Olga Marie be his temporary master. Of course, this didn't mean that Wyrm couldn't do without a master, because Wyrm was directly summoned by the Great Holy Grail. No, it should be said that Wyrm's main body was summoned by the Great Holy Grail. In fact, it was Wyrm's main body that was summoned by the Great Holy Grail. Of course, on the other hand, Wyrm was not interested in Olga Marie or anything like that. It was because Olga Marie's previous words made Wyrm quite interested. Who can save me, Rafe? At that time Olga Marie did shout that. And Wyrm had seen the owner of this name not long ago, well, and he was tricked. Wyrm intuitively felt that Olga Marie and Rafe must be related, but Olga Marie didn't look like a big villain. Therefore, Wyrm was very curious about where Rafe, Olga Marie, and the others came from. There was no doubt that Rafe was not from this world, and Olga Marie was full of puzzles. Wyrm was a magician who explored the whole Winterwood City. At that time there was no Olga Marie, and no one entered Winterwood City these days. And the most important thing was that Olga Marie was dead. Yes, Wyrm could perceive that Olga Marie was a ghost existence, similar to the existence of a servant. But it seemed that Olga Marie didn't know that she was dead, and still thought that she was a human, still alive. For various reasons, Wyrm proposed to establish a contract with Olga Marie. I refuse. Of course, Olga Marie with a sad and angry face refused Wyrm. Wyrm certainly knew why Olga Marie refused. As before, Wyrm and Olga Marie joked that there was no master talent. Olga Marie was a first-class magician, but he didn't know why Olga Marie didn't have a master talent, not even a little bit. First-class magicians didn't have a master talent, which was undoubtedly interesting. However, who was Wyrm? For this kind of situation, Wyrm prepared a tool very early. Wyrm took out a necklace from the black ripples. This was a necklace that Wyrm made according to the technology of the Yuktamyrenia family. When Wyrm threw the necklace to Olga Marie and explained the situation, Olga Marie was in a daze for a while, and then happily put on the necklace and established a magic channel with Wyrm. The necklace had a technique that could connect the wearer and the contract servant. Although it only provided magic and there was no command curse, it could be regarded as half a master. This was the technology of the Yuktamyrenia family to let the cyborgs provide magic to the servants. The cyborgs provided magic, the master managed the servants, gave orders, fought, and used command curses. It could be said that it didn't consume the master's magic at all. In order to establish a master-servant contract with Olga Marie, Wuming came up with a stupid way. Only in this way, Wuming and Olga Marie didn't completely trust each other. After all, Olga Marie was a magician, she should be cautious, which she did well. And Wuming simply wanted to follow Olga Marie. He wasn't in a hurry to know her information. Wuming had a hunch that as long as he followed Olga Marie, he would naturally know the information. Therefore, the two didn't exchange information. After that, Wuming proposed to go to his stronghold to see the situation. He still had an ally servant. Because she was unfamiliar with the place, so Olga Marie agreed to follow Wuming to his stronghold. As a result, because the small villa that Wuming bought was in the east, and Wuming and Olga Marie's location was in the west, the two of them didn't arrive for a long time. Olga Marie said, "I'm going to die." Then they encountered the collapse of the Winterwood Hotel. Wuming didn't want to stir up trouble. After all, his current assassin class, Jack the Ripper, wasn't strong in frontal combat. You probably haven't seen a Jack with a 100% critical strike rate. So he could only kidnap Twinkle and let her be his damage dealer. However, trouble always fell from the sky. Leia. Chapter 337. Leia. Accompanied by an inexplicable roar, a black creature with black smoke all over its body charged out of nowhere. The opponent was undoubtedly a servant. Wuming could feel it at such a close distance, and it seemed to be a berserker. What's going on? Isn't Berserker Hercules? Wuming frowned. Later, Wuming observed that Berserker seemed to rush out from the collapsed Winterwood Hotel, which meant that the opponent was previously under the hotel. The opponent's whole body was black, and he could tell that it was an African. Wuming thought so. However, it was lucky. Leia. The black mass roared and rushed toward Wuming. That's right, it rushed toward Wuming, ignoring Olga Marie. Wuming could feel that the opponent was targeting him. Olga, hide, it's a servant. Wuming said seriously to Olga Marie behind him. Olga Marie quickly found a ruin to hide. Berserker picked up a telephone pole from the side of the road, jumped up and slammed it toward Wuming. Boom. The ground was directly smashed, and large pieces of stone flew up. Ooh. Olga Marie covered her head and hid behind the ruins, whimpering. Really, what the hell did you do, assassin? Wuming fell behind Berserker, so the attack naturally didn't hit Wuming. It's not my fault, this guy came to me. Wuming shrugged. Leia. Berserker roared and once again raised the blackened telephone pole, and smashed it toward Wuming. Boom. The ground was smashed again. This guy's agility is at least A rank. Wuming frowned. Wuming almost couldn't dodge the attack. But I'm an assassin. If you expect an assassin to fight a berserker, perhaps only the ancestor of the assassin, the legendary first Hassan, could do that. If that's the case. Wuming narrowed his eyes. Leia. Berserker madly rushed toward Wuming. With Berserker's current speed, Wuming was in danger. The dark mist city. Along with Wuming's noble phantasm, countless smoke exploded and engulfed Berserker, forcing Berserker was forced to stop. The smoke enveloped an area of 100 meters with Wuming as the center. Then the smoke disappeared, revealing Wuming's figure and Berserker's disappearance. Olga Marie put out her head when there was no more noise. Did you kill that Berserker? Olga Marie was in disbelief. The smoke also covered her, so Olga Marie couldn't see anything and couldn't hear anything clearly, so she didn't know what happened. Of course not, I just trapped that Berserker in an enchantment. Let's go, he'll come out soon. That's right, Jack the Ripper's enchantment, the mist. It was the spirit storm that recreated London in the 19th century. It was also the reason why Jack the Ripper could spread fog and use fog. Enchantment. Enchantment. Olga Marie was obviously shocked. After all, for a magician, an enchantment was the highest level of magic. Don't be so surprised. My enchantment is cursed. It's not a good thing. Wuming shook his head, then took the lead and began to move toward the stronghold. After that, Olga Marie didn't ask any more questions. After all, Olga Marie was just a fake master who provided magic, so she couldn't see the attributes of the servant. Well, my situation is a bit complicated. I can't explain it in a short time. You can call me Jack or Assassin after all, we're just partners. Wuming said at that time. Jack. Assassin. Olga Marie thought carefully. Hey. If you don't follow me, I'm leaving. Wait a minute. After walking for a while, Olga Marie really couldn't walk anymore. So Wuming took Olga Marie to a store to settle down. Although most of the buildings were destroyed and burned, there were still some buildings that weren't completely destroyed. Like this small store, there were some edible food in it. Here. Wuming said, throwing a bread to Olga Marie. This is. Olga Marie looked at the old goods, slightly nostalgic. It's still in the packaging, it's still edible. Wuming continued to organize the edible food, one by one, putting it into the black ripple. Olga Marie ate in small bites, looking at Wuming's black ripple. Is this an independent space? Olga Marie asked. Yes, because I cheated a little. I let the assassin rank have the noble phantoms of other ranks. Wuming smiled a little awkwardly. Wait, you can cheat. Olga Marie heard that for the first time, she couldn't stay calm. Didn't I say after all I'm special? Wuming just said to Olga Marie's surprise. Then, after organizing the edible food, Wuming walked to the door. I'll go out and check the situation. You stay here and don't run around. Wuming said. What? You make it sound like I like to run around. Olga Marie retorted Wuming, but Wuming just pretended not to hear. I also need to clear my mind, you should go. Olga Marie said in disgust. Wuming shrugged and didn't say anything. Wu Ming released his mana, propelling himself to fly up and directly arrived at the roof of a tall building. From the height of this building, he could almost overlook the entire Winterwood City. Standing on the roof, Wuming looked at Winterwood City. He could vaguely see that there were battles in Winterwood City, and there were more than one. There weren't many battles that could cause large-scale explosions, and Wuming could vaguely sense a small battle. But it's a bit too much. Wuming said in detail. What Wu Ming was referring to was naturally the battles in those few places. Assuming that in addition to Silent Noise and Berserker just now, there were still 7 servants, and those large-scale and small-scale battles just now were more than 3 places. It's impossible that there were a few servants who had nothing to do and attacked by themselves. Combined with the extra Berserker, plus Lev's trick on the Holy Grail before Wuming was sent flying, Wuming almost guessed it. The number of servants increased? Is it to chase me or something else? Wuming thought. At this time, Wuming sensed that several servants were coming this way. If these servants didn't change their direction, there was no doubt that they would encounter Olga Marie. The perception of servants was much stronger than humans, and Olga Marie couldn't hide under the eyes of servants. But the servants coming this way just proved Wuming's conjecture. The number of servants increased. Swish! Wuming instantly disappeared from the roof. Chapter 338. On the abandoned and burning street, 2 figures were running. One of the figures was wearing a rather revealing purple tights, and some parts of the body were covered with armor. One of the figures was holding a 2-meter-high shield with a cross on the outside, and the other hand was holding a girl. Needless to say, she was a servant. The girl had short, orange-red hair that was tied into a single ponytail. She wore a simple white top with black straps around her chest and abdomen. There was a black belt around her waist. She wore a short black skirt, black stockings, and white boots. Although it looked like work clothes from somewhere, it looked extremely beautiful on the girl. The girl with short orange hair had 3 red marks on the back of her right hand, which formed a shield. Obviously, she was the master of the girl in purple tights. Next to the 2, a girl in a cloak was carrying a scythe and holding a little girl with black hair in her arms. If Wuming was here, he would know that she was one of the 7 servants on the beach. She used a scythe as a weapon, Lancer of the Tong family. Needless to say, the little girl with short black hair in her arms was the master of Lancer. The 3 petal-like marks on the back of her right hand were the best proof. Matthew, are you okay? The girl with short orange hair asked with concern. She seemed to feel guilty for letting the younger generation carry her. It's okay, senpai. I am senpai's servant, and senpai is my master. The girl named Matthew said and smiled at her master. They're coming. Lancer, who was beside the two of them, finished speaking. Suddenly, a sharp arrow was shot towards them. Mashu quickly stopped and raised her shield to block the sharp heart-shaped arrows. Bang, 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 bang. A few steel-like collision sounds came, and Matthew, who was holding the shield, was pushed back a few steps by the huge impact. "Are you okay, Matthew?" the orange-haired girl asked worriedly, her words vaguely hinting that she was blaming herself for not being able to help. "It's okay, senpai. Please be careful. The opponent is a very powerful servant." Although it was very difficult to resist the attack, Mashu still smiled and said to her master who was protecting her, "Matthew is right. Chaldea's instrument shows that there are two servants comparable to gods. No, there is no doubt that they are gods near you. Be careful, Matthew, Tachika." A male voice came from a device on the wrist of the girl with short orange hair, who seemed to be called Rika. Although the voice sounded rather unreliable, cough cough, there was no doubt that he was right. Then Matthew said to Lancer, "Ms. Anna, please help us. I don't want senpai to leave this place." Matthew and Tachika had seen Anna's ability. For many skeleton soldiers, Anna just waved her sickle and killed all the skeleton soldiers. She was much more powerful than Matthew. The girl called Anna couldn't help but look at her little master. Compared to Anna, she hoped that these people could call her Lancer. Also, if her little master didn't always call Anna sister, Matthew and others wouldn't know that she was called Anna. Sister Anna. Sakura Madu looked at Anna. But Anna was still hesitant, because the enemy this time was. "What's wrong, my lovely sister? Are you afraid to attack your own sister?" A beautiful voice came from behind them. Everyone looked at the newcomer in panic, because they didn't notice her presence until she spoke. But it was obvious that she had been standing there for a long time. "That's right, my lovely sister. Are you afraid to attack your own sister?" However, at this time, Matthew and others also heard a beautiful voice in front of them. Everyone looked to the front again, and a gorgeous purple-haired girl with two ponytails appeared in front of them. She was dressed almost exactly the same as the one behind them. The only difference between the two was their clothes and weapons. The girl who came from behind didn't have any weapons in her hands. She only had a gauntlet that protected the back of her hands. Moreover, it was more appropriate to call it an ornament than a gauntlet. It made her hands look more tempting. The girl's clothes were similar to a royal shawl and a low-cut princess dress with a long transparent hem that covered her beautiful legs. A few transparent scarves were wrapped around the girl's body, making her look particularly charming. The girl who came from the front held a small bow made of gold in her hand, but there were no arrows. From this, it could be seen that the heart-shaped arrows just now were shot by this girl. The girl didn't have gauntlets on her hands, but a bracelet made of beautiful strings of beads, which made her small hands even more beautiful. In terms of clothes, the girl's clothes were similar to the clothes of the Greek girl next door. It was just a short skirt that went up to the knees, and there was a bow in front of the chest. Other than that, the two girls looked exactly the same, and even their temperament was exactly the same. They were like the goddess of love, full of charm, and couldn't help but want to surrender. Fortunately, Matthew and others were all women, and more or less resisted the two gods. If they were men, they would probably be lying on the ground licking the toes of the goddess. "Sister." Anna couldn't help but whisper. The three people beside Anna heard what Anna said and were shocked. "Sister?" Matthew looked at Anna in disbelief. "So Anna, you are also a god?" Tachika looked at Anna in surprise. Anna only made a soft sound and did not say anything else. "How sad, my sister, you haven't told them your real name yet." The girl in the back smiled and looked at Anna with a light tone. "Your master looks too young, and it seems that she can't use the ability of a master." The girl in front covered her mouth and laughed. "So what should we do now, sister? Will you die with your companions, or rise up and resist us?" The two girls finished each other's words as if they were the same person. "Sister. Perhaps. I was summoned to this era to kill you again." Anna put Sakura Madu down, and Sakura Madu ran into Tachika's arms obediently. Then, Anna picked up the scythe from behind and stood back to back with Matthew, protecting their master behind them. Seeing the scythe pointed at her, The girl in the back smiled happily and painfully. My poor sister, she has to experience the pain of killing her family again. The girl in front was also the same. The two were happy that Anna didn't have to die, but they were sad that their sister had to bear the pain of killing her family. Since that's the case, I'll end all of you. Suddenly, a ghostly voice came out of nowhere. Mother of disintegration. Chapter 339. Maria Ripper. After the activation of the relic's true name, a thick fog engulfed everyone. The thick fog reduced everyone's visibility to less than 5 meters. Even Anna's two sisters could barely see each other. The girl behind Gadotsi, and the rest sensed the danger as they were of the same rank. She quickly warned her sisters. Uriali, be careful. However, the girl named Uriali in front of Gadotsi, and the rest was a little dazed as she let out a doubtful voice. A silhouette appeared behind her. It was a black leather windbreaker, a black top hat and black leather shoes. Everything was black except for the two red glows where his eyes were. It was extremely horrifying. What a pity, Gorgon's goddess. You're really unlucky, said the black silhouette. After all, I exist for women. The black silhouette revealed his face. It was Wuming. After Wuming finished speaking, Uriali's vision turned black and she fell. Sister. Anna shouted in worry. She raised her scythe and looked at Wuming with hostility. Wuming hugged the girl who fell and looked at everyone with a smile. Ignoring Anna, who was looking at him with hostility, Wuming looked at the goddess behind Gadotsi and the rest. Then there's only you, goddess Stheno. Stheno. Matthew said in surprise. He was obviously shocked by the name. Stheno frowned and immediately turned around to leave. Although she was a goddess, Stheno knew that she did not have much combat power. The reason why the two servants, Anna and Matthew, were forced to flee with their masters was that Matthew was too weak, and Anna did not want to fight with her two sisters, which led to the scene where the four of them were besieged by Stheno and Uriali. Moreover, when Anna picked up her scythe and was ready to fight, Stheno and Uriali were sad that their sister was going to kill her sister again. The two of them knew that if their younger sister were to fight, the two of them would not be a match at all. Moreover, in mythology, Stheno and Uriali were defined as goddesses who had no combat power at all. If they did not appear in the world as servants, Stheno and her sister Uriali would not have any combat power at all. Seeing that Stheno had escaped, Wuming did not rush to chase after her. Instead, he threw Uriali in his arms to Anna. Although Anna was somewhat hostile to Wuming, she would still choose to catch her sister's corpse, even if it was a conspiracy. Let's leave for a while, said Wuming, turning into smoke and disappearing in front of everyone. Anna, who was holding her sister's corpse, Gadotsi, Matthew, and Sakura Madu were left in a daze. Wuming chased after Stheno at a leisurely pace. It was not because he was arrogant, but because Stheno was now in Wuming's enchantment. That's right. The moment Wuming activated his noble phantasm, he also activated his enchantment, the mist. If Gadotsi and the others were paying attention, they would realize that the environment around them had changed. Besides, the device on Gadotsi's wrist no longer emitted any sound because the mist released by Wuming interfered with the mana connection. Moreover, Wuming had the ability to turn into mist in his enchantment and appear anywhere in an instant. So Wuming was not in a hurry to catch up with Stheno. Sensing the existence of the otherness in his enchantment, Wuming frowned. He hasn't come out yet. However, after sensing the distance between the two of them, Wuming did not bother about him anymore. Instead, he sensed Stheno's location. By the way, even if Stheno was an assassin and also had a level A+ aura concealment, he could not get rid of Wuming. The entire enchantment was filled with mist. As long as there was mist, Wuming could detect it. Therefore, Wuming had already discovered Stheno, who was hiding in the shadows of the alley ahead. After stopping, Wuming walked to the entrance of the alley slowly and looked at the shadows. Do you want to play hide and seek, great goddess? Wuming smiled as he walked into the alley. When he got close to Stheno, a charming voice was suddenly heard. Smile of the goddess. Following the activation of the noble phantasm, Wuming stood there motionlessly as if he was frozen. Then Steno's figure appeared. I thought you were a powerful hero, but I didn't expect you to be the same as the others. A man is a man indeed, Steno said slowly as if he had already won. Walking to Wuming, who was standing there in a daze, Steno raised his head and looked at Wuming. What beautiful eyes, what a handsome face. What a pity, Steno said as if she was intoxicated. None of the men who had been affected by her charm could survive. To be able to attack us sisters, I thought you were really a man who wasn't tempted by beauty. Steno smiled, then raised his hand and caressed Wuming's cheek. Suddenly, when Steno touched Wuming's face, he seemed to have seen something rather shocking. Shock was written all over his face. Slap. Suddenly, a hand grabbed Steno's arm. Then a rather frivolous voice was heard. It's not good to casually invade other people's privacy, great goddess. What? Steno exclaimed in surprise. Looking at the man who grabbed his wrist without any trace of being affected by the charm, Steno smiled bitterly. I see. Was that all a disguise? What a cunning man. Wuming only maintained his smile and didn't explain anything. As for the appearance of being affected by the charm just now, that was an act by Wuming. As someone who had seen through Steno and Euryale's true names, Wuming naturally wouldn't be so rash as to underestimate Steno. Even if Wuming could take down Euryale without any difficulty, Wuming wouldn't think that Steno was easy to deal with. After all, no matter how weak and useless the other party was, she was still a goddess. For example, just now, Steno had only touched Wuming's cheek and seen some information about Wuming. In terms of skills, it should be similar to seeing through true names. As an existence on the same level as them, or even a higher level existence, Wuming said that there was no need to underestimate any god. Gods never lack trump cards. Well, of course, if the difference in strength was too great, he could still underestimate them. Cough cough. In short, because Wuming realized that the other party was a charming goddess, he originally wanted to use a world-class item to resist Wuming, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. After all, his hypostasis was very high, and he had proven before that he was immune to almost all mind control without a world-class item. Therefore, Wuming pretended to be charmed and grabbed Steno when she approached Wuming. As for whether Steno, who was caught by Wuming, would escape or not, Wuming already had a plan. Chapter 340. Wuming grabbed Steno's hand, and a silver chain wrapped around it. Wuming had plenty of pirated Enkidu in his dimension artifact. Cough cough. Anyway, Steno couldn't run away. Moreover, after Steno saw what happened to Wuming, he gave up on the idea of running away. Don't worry, Sly Man. I have no intention of running away, even if you did something terrible to my sister. With a smile on his face, Steno calmly said something rather strange. Although I know you're saying that I didn't kill you, Euryale, please don't be so strange. Forget it. Wuming shrugged nonchalantly and let go of Steno's hand. However, the Enkidu that was connected to Steno's hand, because of Wuming, didn't unlock when Wuming let go of Steno's hand. What? You still don't trust me? Steno raised the Enkidu on his arm and said unhappily. I'm a goddess. A goddess won't lie to a hero who has captured her. Steno narrowed his eyes and smiled at Wuming as if he was looking at a delightful toy. Forget about being a hero. I'm not interested in being a hero. I'm just an assassin, at least for now. Wuming shrugged. Wuming's last sentence was to tell Steno not to expose his identity. He just wanted to be a different kind of assassin. Oh, since the great hero says so, I'll just listen to you. Steno smiled at Wuming. Let's go. Your Euryale should be awake by now, right? Wuming grabbed Steno's hand and started walking towards where they came from. As expected of a brave warrior, you actually dared to hold the hand of a goddess. However, since you didn't do anything to Euryale, I will forgive your rudeness. Steno raised his neck like a proud princess. I feel like it's better to get rid of you now. On the way, Wuming began to ask Steno for information or to verify his speculation. After Wuming told Steno about his speculation that Lev had re-summoned 7 servants, Steno nodded. As expected of you. That's right. The man in the green hat summoned 7 new servants, including me and Euryale. Stheno walked elegantly as if Wuming didn't take the initiative to hold her hand, but she took the initiative to hold Stheno's hand. Then he began to introduce their lineup. I'm an assassin, Riley is an archer, and Saber is a muscle man. I can tell he's a lecherous guy. His eyes lit up when he saw Riley and me, and he even tried to flirt with us. Stheno frowned. He was rather displeased. Stheno knew how to talk up trides up knew how to flirt with. Castor looks like a mature old man. He doesn't talk much. Ryder is a red-haired muscular man. He seems to be a king, and he has some connection with Zeus. He's quite annoying. And the way Castor looks at Ryder is a bit weird. He's full of passion. Stheno smiled mischievously. Wuming ignored her and continued to listen to Stheno's introduction. Stheno looked at Wuming, who didn't respond. He was not surprised and continued to talk. Berserker was a guy covered in black. I couldn't see his face clearly. However, this guy was always by the other Saber's side. You don't know how excited Berserker was at that time. It looked like he wanted to kill Saber. Wuming thought that the Berserker mentioned by Stheno should be the black Berserker they met before, and the other Saber mentioned by Stheno should be Artoria. Combined with what Stheno said, Wuming now knew why Berserker came straight to him. I'm afraid that Berserker is a Knight of the Round Table, Wuming thought. Although Wuming didn't think that a Knight of the Round Table could become a Berserker, there were exceptions to everything. Like Mordred, with her obsession with Artoria, she was likely to become a Berserker. In the last Holy Grail War, although Mordred appeared as a Saber, her fighting style was as violent as a Berserker. But the Berserker who attacked Wuming didn't think it was Mordred. Why was Wuming so sure? It felt wrong. Well, that's right. The Berserker didn't give Wuming the same feeling as Mordred at all. Wuming was very confident in his intuition, and didn't accept any rebuttal. Ahem. After all, even if Mordred became a Berserker, she wouldn't have an obsession with Wuming. If it was really Mordred, then Artoria would be very busy right now, and the Berserker wouldn't attack Wuming at all. What about Lancer? Wuming shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He asked Stheno. This is also why I put Lancer at the end. Stheno's eyes began to look serious. You must be careful. Lancer is a god. If you really want to call him a demigod, he should have the ability to attack gods. He gave me a very dangerous feeling. Stheno recalled the golden figure he had seen before. It shone like the sun. The other party had a special attack against gods, and with the light of the sun, it was too bad for Stheno, who was a snake. Like the sun, wearing golden armor, holding a long spear. Wuming felt that this person was more familiar the more he thought about it. I hope it's not him. Wuming said softly. If it was really him, Gilgamesh might be in danger. What are you mumbling about? Stheno rolled her eyes at Wuming. Nothing, Wuming said casually. Humph. Stheno saw that Wuming was perfunctory and didn't ask anymore. After a few minutes, Wuming began to complain. I was wondering why you ran so far. Wuming looked at Stheno with disdain. They had been walking for a while, and they still hadn't reached where Matthew and the others were. After all, London wasn't small. Ahahaha. Wuming could transform into smoke and move quickly, but Stheno couldn't. If it weren't for you chasing me, I wouldn't have run so far. Stheno looked at Wuming with disdain. So it's my fault. Wuming was helpless. Then unlock this for me, so I can keep up with your speed. Stheno raised her hand, and the silver chain on it glowed faintly. This was the symbol of the Enkidu, which was sealing Stheno's power. I have other reasons for not unlocking it for you. At this time, Wuming was about to explain, but his expression suddenly changed. That guy went over. That guy? Is there anything else in your enchantment? Stheno looked at Wuming in confusion. However, the moment Stheno finished asking, Wuming didn't answer. He picked Stheno up and started sprinting. Wah! What are you doing? You gave me a fright. There's no time to explain, we'll talk later. Just like that, Wuming carried Stheno in a princess carry and sprinted in the direction of Gadatsi and the others. Chapter 341. When Wuming went after Stheno, there were only 4 people left. Gadotsi, Matthew, Anna, and the unconscious Uriah. Gadotsi looked at the direction where Wuming went. Then she looked at Matthew. Matthew, is that man also a servant? He's so powerful. Gadotsi was a little excited, and her eyes were shining. Yes, senpai, the man who went after the enemy is a servant, but strangely, I haven't found his aura. His rank may be assassin. After Matthew explained to Gadotsi about Wuming, he wanted to contact their support personnel, but, Doctor? Are you there? No matter how Matthew called the device on Gadotsi's hand, no one responded. What's going on? Just when Matthew was puzzled, Gadotsi's panicked voice came. Matthew, look, the environment around us has changed. Hearing Gadotsi's surprised and slightly panicked voice, Matthew also looked around. The surrounding buildings had become European-style buildings, which were completely different from the modern buildings in Winterwood City. Similarly, there was no one around, and there was no trace of life. Because of the fog brought by Wuming, Matthew and Gadotsi didn't notice the change in the surrounding environment at first. If it weren't for Gadotsi's curiosity about the fog, it would have taken Matthew a while to notice the change in the surrounding environment. Matthew walked to a nearby corner and touched the wall. Senpai, this should be a 19th century building. Matthew turned around and looked at Gadotsi. Hey Matthew, do you know this place? Gadotsi was a little surprised. Yes, I've seen it before. Matthew smiled and nodded. Matthew is really knowledgeable. Gadotsi praised Matthew, which made Matthew blush a little. This fog contains extremely powerful toxins. Ordinary people may die if they stay here for a long time. At this time, Anna suddenly said. Gadotsi and Matthew looked at Anna, who had been holding her sister before. At this time, Anna had already hugged Sakura Madu in her arms and protected Sakura Madu with her cloak. What? Senpai, how do you feel now? Matthew looked at Gadotsi with a little panic. Although it's not that I don't trust Anna, I really don't feel uncomfortable. Gadotsi touched her body and shook her head. Really, senpai? Matthew still didn't believe it and looked at Gadotsi with concern. Really, Matthew, don't be so nervous. Gadotsi smiled and waved her hand to signal Matthew to calm down. That, Anna sis, actually, I don't feel any discomfort. It's better to say that the air in the fog is very fresh. At this time, Sakura Madu, who was protected in Anna's arms, also spoke. Anna was silent at this time, thinking. Previously, Anna was silent for a while because of her sister's corpse, and didn't take care of Sakura Madu, but when she found that her sister was not dead, she felt relieved. At the same time, Anna also discovered the toxins contained in the fog. After that, she quickly protected Sakura Madu. In other words, Sakura Madu was not protected by Anna for a short period of time. Anna and Matthew could stay in the fog for a long time without being hurt, but their masters were also fine. Gadotsi was not affected at all, and Sakura Madu said that the air was very fresh. It's better to be cautious. After all, this is likely to be assassin's enchantment. Anna was silent for a moment, but she still didn't release Sakura Madu from her cloak. However, after Anna said the word enchantment, Matthew was shocked. Enchantment. After all, Matthew already knew that Anna was also a goddess, so Matthew felt that Anna's words were very credible. Looking at the somewhat surprised Matthew, Gadotsi, who didn't know what an enchantment was puzzled. Matthew, what is that? Enchantment? Gadotsi asked. Senpai, enchantment is a magic that can instantiate one's own scenery. You can think of it as an independent small world. Matthew knew that his master was not a magician, so he explained it in the simplest terms. Independent small world. Is it that powerful? Gadotsi was also surprised. Well, it's called enchantment. It's called the magic closest to magic. It can be said to be the highest level magic. Matthew nodded. The highest level magic. For Gadotsi, she didn't understand the meaning of magic, but the term highest level magic was very useful for Gadotsi. After all, it was the highest level magic. And among magicians, magicians with enchantment are quite rare. It seems that assassin is not an ordinary person. Matthew looked at the direction where Wuming left. The servant over there is right. She is indeed not an ordinary person. A seductive voice sounded. And it was a voice that everyone was familiar with. What's that sound? Gudatsi looked in the direction of Urieli, who was unconscious. As expected, the unconscious Urieli had woken up. She was sitting on the ground in an elegant posture, looking like a young lady. Huh. Didn't you say that you were killed by assassin just now? How did you come back to life? Gudatsi's face was filled with a zombie expression. After all, Gudatsi always thought that Urieli was killed by Wuming. How rude of me, unknown master. Let's not talk about how I'm a goddess. How could I die so easily? Moreover, that guy isn't a cruel person. Why would he kill me? Urieli looked at Gudatsi with disgust, which made Gudatsi feel a little embarrassed. Are you awake, sister? Anna knew that her sister was not dead, so she was not surprised to see Urieli wake up. I'm so sad, my dear sister. Can't you be more gentle with your sister? Urieli said uninterestedly. Anna didn't say anything. She didn't even look at Urieli. You won't be our enemy anymore, right? Matthew said uncertainly. Yes, of course. I've been defeated by that man, and I'm his prisoner now. I won't attack you anymore. Urieli didn't feel like a prisoner at all. She looked at Gudatsi and Matthew playfully. Besides, although Master asked us to kill all living creatures, Stino and I have no intention of attacking you. We're only chasing you because our sister is here. Sigh. Matthew and Gudatsi were dumbfounded. Hearing this, Gudatsi and Mashu remembered that it was Anna who passed by them at the beginning, and then the two of them began to chase after them. Because of that, Matthew had no choice but to propose a collaboration with Anna. I'm sorry. Anna's expression couldn't be seen, but Matthew and Gudatsi felt that Anna's face was extremely red. Let's not talk about that first. A servant is coming, Urieli said calmly. Laia dash. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.